More recently, there was this one when she went on The View. This is very recent. Take a listen to her message there.
I don't know what the difference between our Christian right and the Taliban is. I have no idea what the difference is.
You're not the only person who's said that.
I don't know what the difference is.
Yeah.
What's happening in this country right now in the name of religion is so dangerous.
Okay, I love the whoopee response. You're not the only one who feels that way. You know, I only know other people feel that way. There's no difference. Taliban and Christian right. So Patti LuPone, and then as I mentioned, she was ripping on me too. So I don't like her. I don't like her for all of these reasons. But this is so delicious. Okay, let's just dig in because you're going to like this. It's so fun. It's so rare that these people get hoisted on their own petards. But she's on her petard, ladies. Okay, here's where things started to go wrong for her. Okay, last year, I don't know where we're getting. Wait, tell me the sources that I'm reading from, so I don't completely copy this off of somebody without credit.
Megyn, it's okay. You can just say other people have said that. You're not the only one who has said that. You can just
other people also agree that last year, Patti LuPone's show, The Roommate, shared a wall with a different show, the Alicia Keys musical, which is called Hell's Kitchen. Okay, so their two shows shared a wall. And the actress who stars in the Alicia Keys musical is Keisha Lewis. And Patti LuPone didn't like sharing a wall with Keisha Lewis's show, Hell's Kitchen, because the sound from the Alicia Keys musical would bleed through. And Patti LuPone, who really does fancy herself the queen of Broadway, was unhappy that she had to listen to any of the musical notes. So she spoke with the head of the other theater and asked him if he could fix the noise problem. After those efforts, which came this past November, Keisha Lewis posted a video on Instagram. Do we have the shot? Let's just play it.
Ms. LuPone, these actions, in my opinion, are bullying. They're offensive. They're racially microaggressive. They're rude. They're rooted in privilege. And these actions also lack a sense of community and leadership for someone as yourself who has been in the business as long as you have. I want to explain what a microaggression is. These are subtle, unintentional comments or actions that convey stereotypes, biases, or negative assumptions about someone based on their race. Examples include calling a black show loud in a way that dismisses it. Referring to a predominantly black Broadway show as loud can unintentionally reinforce harmful stereotypes. And it also feels dismissive of the artistry and the voices that are being celebrated on stage. Ms. LuPone, I respectfully submit to you that you owe us an apology, not flowers.
Don't! And flowers. Shots fired. This is so perfect, right? It's like the woke and the woker, and then it's like you're a racist. It's a microaggression to say a black show is loud, even though it's Alicia Keys and it's a musical. I'm sure the piano and the singing is loud. It goes on the whole time, but so it does in most musicals. In any event, shots fired. Okay, so then Patti LuPone sits down for an interview with The New Yorker. And she doesn't give two shits that anybody's attacking her because she's like, I fucking hang out with George Clooney and The View. You bitches can go F. Okay? So she says to The New Yorker, I know you got to go soon, Eliana, so you can peace out when you got to go, but this is too delicious soon. So you stay as long as you can. She says, when The New Yorker writer brought up the incident, oh my God, said LuPone, here's the problem. She calls herself a veteran. Let's find out how many Broadway shows Keisha Lewis has done because she doesn't know what the fuck she's talking about. Okay. She then Googled, meaning Patti LuPone Googled Keisha Lewis. Quote, she's done 7. I've done 31. Don't call yourself a vet, bitch.
Tours of duty.
Angry. She's an angry lady. Okay, so she's like asserting her power, like, I'm the queen of Broadway, Keisha, suck it. Okay, so then this New Yorker writer, who is that's the person, by the way, who we got the information from, and the New York Post. We got to who's the writer, because this person is subversive. Michael Schulman, I think I'm your fan. I'll have to research you more, but I love this piece. So this guy is one subversive SOB. So he then writes, I mentioned that Audra McDonald, the Tony-decorated Broadway star, had given the video by Keisha Lewis supportive emojis. I love this guy. He's a little shit stirrer. He's like, oh, well, another Broadway queen who's very well rewarded and Tony decorated. She liked the video. Audra McDonald did. And Patti LuPone said, exactly. And I thought, you should know better. That's typical of Audra. She's not a friend. Hard D. She's not a friend. It's fun playing her. The two singers had some long ago rift, LuPone said, but she didn't want to elaborate. When I asked what she thought of Audra McDonald, the thumbs up lady, current production of Gypsy, she stared at me in silence for 15 seconds. Then she turned to the window and sighed, "What a beautiful day." I couldn't love this anymore. The drama for these just highfalutin Broadway bees. Okay, so here it comes. Here it comes. Open letter signed by more than 600 members of the Broadway community condemning Patti LuPone's comments about Keisha Lewis and Audra McDonald. Now you've effed yourself over with not one but two beautiful black Broadway broads, and you're in serious trouble, Patti LuPone. 600 people. The letter was addressed openly to the theater community, as well as Tony producers, the Broadway League, and the American Theater Wing. Okay, here we go. All right, okay, goodbye, Eliana. We'll miss you. Emily, you get the joy of staying through to the end of this.
I was going to say, she did that on purpose.
She's like, peace out. This is too... Anyway, but you're the lucky one who gets to hear the end. From the letter. This language is not only degrading and misogynistic, it is a blatant act of racialized disrespect. It constitutes bullying. It constitutes harassment, the letter reads. It is emblematic of the microaggressions and abuse that people in this industry have endured for far too long, too often without consequence. Yes, because when you think of Broadway, you think about its microaggressions against Black and minority people. Isn't that really what Broadway... That's the experience you get over there. The audience has heard me say, went to see Macbeth on Broadway a couple years ago with Doug. Daniel Craig was starring in it. We saw a guy in a wheelchair who came out to introduce the play. It was a majority minority cast, even though it was 1500s Scotland. You were like almost no white people. The king's son was played by a woman who had a blue mohawk. But Broadway hates minorities, really, is what they're saying. It's the abuse and microaggressions that people in this industry have endured for far too long, too often without consequence. Quote, to publicly attack a woman who has contributed to this art form with such excellence, leadership, and grace. And they don't mean Patti LuPone. They mean the woman starring in Hell's Kitchen, Keisha Lewis, I think, or maybe Audra McDonald. Unclear. Either one will work. But to attack her and to discredit the legacy, of Audra McDonald. So they meant Keisha Lewis first, and discrediting Audra's legacy. The most nominated and awarded performer in Tony Award history, not you, Patti, is not simply a personal offense. It is a public affront to the values of collaboration, equity, and mutual respect that our theater community claims to uphold. We call on the American Theater Wing and the Broadway League to take immediate action, not only in response to Patti LuPone's comments, but in establishing a broader standard of accountability moving forward. So they won't have to deal with these racists and misogynists running rampant on stage on Broadway, Emily. I mean, who knew? Individuals, including Patti LuPone, who used their platform to publicly demean, harass, or disparage fellow artists, particularly with racial, she said, loud. It's racial, gendered. She said, bitch, or doesn't know what the fuck she's talking about. Yeah, both of those things, gendered, or otherwise violent language should not be welcomed at industry events. You're out of the cool crowd, Patti LuPone. You won't be invited to the next LGBTQ Pride event, including the Tony Awards, the fundraisers, and the public programs. First, we lost the Kennedy Center, and now this. Patti can
Does it actually say that in the letter? It actually says that?
Not the Kennedy part,
but before that, it really says
Tony Awards, fundraisers, and public programs. They want a shunning.
They're
going to
kick Patti LuPone out of the Tony Award.
Yes.
It's civil war. It's civil war.
I love it. I love it. There's literally no one to root for and everyone to loathe. It's so wonderful. You don't get these stories every day. As of Saturday, the letter had almost 700 signatures. They're probably over 700. I don't even think they're more than that on Broadway. Probably have 1,000 people working at Broadway. And then Saturday came. Oh, by the way, speaking of the Kennedy Center, in that interview with the New Yorker, the writer pointed out that she told me more than once, quote, the Trumpified Kennedy Center should get blown up. She wants it blown up, the Trumpified Kennedy Center. So now, by the way, she got no blowback for that. No nasty letter, no open letter about her violent language. No one gave two shits. But they're very upset she said loud.
People read it.
But the lady's very upset that she referred to a musical about Alicia Keys as loud because they share a wall that she can hear. Okay, so here, of course, was the forced apology, which is such a fun part of the act. Okay, here's the apology. For as long as I have worked in the fucking theater. No, she doesn't. It just sounded like her. In the theater. I've spoken my mind and never apologized. That is changing today. I am deeply sorry for the words I used during the New Yorker interview, particularly about Keisha Lewis, which were demeaning and disrespectful. Again, this is what she said about her. She calls herself a veteran. Let's find out how many Broadway shows she's done. She doesn't know what the fuck she's talking about. She's done 7. I've done 31. Don't call yourself a vet, bitch. They were demeaning and disrespectful. I am devastated that my behavior has offended others and has run counter to what we hold dear in the community. I hope to have the chance to speak to Audra and Keisha personally to offer my sincere apologies. I made a mistake. I take full responsibility for it, and I am committed to making this right. Our entire theater community deserves better. That's it. That's story time with MK. Courtesy of this guy who wrote a banger of a New Yorker piece, the New York Post, and Patti LuPone and her own very weird Broadway community's overreactions to everything. Your thoughts on the whole thing?
Well, I have so many, Megan. But first of all, I feel like I just watched a one-woman show, which was you as Patti LuPone, channeling Patti LuPone, going back and forth in this bitter civil war on Broadway. Now, it's just... Patti LuPone has been a known sort of bully, or the accusations of her being a bully have circulated around Broadway for years. It's sort of baked into the lore and the myth of Patti LuPone is that she's like this old school Broadway diva. And so the fact that it's now being treated as like a social justice issue to take down Patti LuPone is really something. Now, suddenly, 2025, everyone must take down Patti LuPone because she accused the Alicia Keys musical of being too loud at one point. I mean, I'm just going to keep pulling on the same thread and make this connection between the awful Rosie O'Donnell herpes video, the Sex and the City video, and the Rachel Maddow, Nicole Wallace podcast that we talked about on the show today, Megan. It's like these people don't have anyone to tell them stop because they have exercised, they've purged good faith critics who are still touching grass from their community, so they don't have anyone to tell them how insane and ridiculous they sound, and it is making their work suffer. It is turning them into not just like crazy, eccentric, interesting artists, but just like fully sick, mentally ill people. Like they're still lecturing people about microaggressions in the year of our Lord 2025. It just I think you couldn't write it because you would think at this point they would have had some like humility and self-reflection, but no, because they've purged everyone who might be a good faith critic, and it's not good for them. It's not good for the country. But at this point, we can kind of just let them have their sideshow, like their little side project, where they're
self-destructing. I mean. Yeah, it's like they're all killing each other, so it's fine. I don't care. We win either way. I don't care who wins this fight. But not for nothing, how insane was that video by the star of the Alicia Keys musical attacking what Patti LuPone said, which was, your show's loud and we can hear it through the wall. I mean, that was Looney Tunes. The microaggressions. Can we just watch that? Can I just see it one more time? I just need to see some of that one more time. This is Keisha Lewis on Instagram warning Patti LuPone about her terrible language.
Ms. LuPone, these actions, in my opinion, are bullying. They're offensive. They're racially microaggressive. They're rude. They're rooted in privilege. And these actions also lack a sense of community and leadership for someone as yourself who has been in the business as long as you have. I want to explain what a microaggression is. These are subtle, unintentional comments or actions that convey stereotypes, biases, or negative assumptions about someone based on their race. Examples include calling a black show loud in a way that dismisses it. Referring to a predominantly black Broadway show as loud can unintentionally reinforce harmful stereotypes. And it also feels dismissive
it is loud.
Of the artistry and the voices that are being celebrated on stage. Ms. LuPone, I respectfully submit to you that you owe us an apology, not flowers.
Unbelievable. Okay,
isn't it a microaggression to tell someone to pull up their mask when they might have had a medical reason for not wearing a mask? That sounds like a microaggression, singling them out in the audience.
Good point. Here's the thing that I like my own analysis of this. Live by the sword, die by the sword. We begin today on the court appearance by Tyler Robinson, the man accused extremely credibly of murdering our friend Charlie Kirk in September. He made his first in-person court appearance yesterday out in Utah. He had appeared virtually in 2 previous hearings, and he was allowed to wear civilian gear, not a prison jumpsuit, in order to protect his presumption of innocence, given that while there are obviously no jurors yet, this trial doesn't take place until tentatively January of 2027, he would be on camera with the media there, and they don't want to taint the jury pool. So great. He gets to stand there like some sort of upstanding citizen in his blue button-down shirt and tie. He was all smiles, which is fucking disgusting, because I guess he's feeling joyful. He's maybe feeling like he's going to get away with it. I don't know what he's thinking. I do care, but I don't care about his well-being. His parents sat in the front row. The mother was crying. I mean, I'm sorry that she's sad, and I'm sorry she raised a killer, but that's what she did. Again, I have some empathy for the parents, but not for him whatsoever. And the parents, for the record, did the right thing. When they recognized their son from the pictures that were released of the crime scene by the FBI within the hours after Charlie was murdered, and they recognized the picture of the gun that the FBI released, and they contacted him. They were the ones who identified their own son as having been the person in the photos and that having been the gun that his grandfather gave to him. They contacted their son asking where he was. They eventually figured out that it was him. He reportedly confessed to his parents, who then brought in a family friend who was both a pastor and connected with law enforcement to convince Tyler Robinson to turn himself in, which is what happened. That's how this went down. That's why, among other reasons, he was arrested. His fingerprints were all over the gun, were reportedly over, I can't remember if it was the ammo, in addition to the doors leading to the rooftop, etc. And in addition to confessing to his parents, he confessed to his trans furry lover in text messages that, I grant you, sound odd. They sound a little pre-scripted, but that does not lead sane people to believe this was the FBI creating a false dialogue, but possibly these two freaks, Tyler Robinson and his trans furry boyfriend, creating a false dialogue to, in my view, at best, try to exonerate Lance Twiggs, the trans furry boyfriend, from knowing about this thing in advance, which I believe he did. I believe he knew in advance, and I believe his weird trans furry community knew in advance, and some couldn't keep their fucking mouths shut and started spewing off online about wait until September 10th. Wait until you see what happens September 10th. And then when Charlie was murdered, went back online to say, I told you. So I'd love to know where things stand with that piece of the investigation. But because I am a sane person who understands the law, I also know that the FBI, does not run around updating its investigation and releasing the very latest on what they found. And people who are demanding that the FBI or DOJ do so do not know anything about law enforcement. Some of us have been covering in depth legal cases and matters and have even tried cases and matters for years. That is how I have spent the past 30 years of my life, plus trying cases involved in the legal system as a trial attorney, then a Supreme Court correspondent covering cases, civil and criminal, then as a legal correspondent for Fox News, legal commentator for Fox News, and ever thereafter. And let me tell you something. The FBI does not run around updating its information after somebody gets indicted. It doesn't. It would be extraordinary if it were to do so. And the DOJ is extremely tight-lipped, normally on its criminal cases. When it's not, it's behaving inappropriately. When it's not, you have rogue prosecutors who wasn't with the DOJ, Tish James, but like her, the Attorney General of New York, running around trying to update her case against Donald Trump, or Fani Willis shooting her mouth off about Donald Trump. What did we do when those prosecutors did that? We ripped them a new one because it's inappropriate. Stop requesting or requiring the FBI or the DOJ to update its evidence for you. You're not the target audience. They're trying to preserve the integrity of this case for when they get it in front of a jury, who are the only people who matter. I'm sorry, but their opinion is the only opinion that's going to matter in this case. And they will come to that opinion based on evidence that gets submitted to them that passes the rules of evidence, which are there to maintain the integrity of a case and an investigation and of the defendant's constitutional rights. That's how our system works. That's how our system works. Stop demanding that the FBI update you. That's not how it works. And it would be inappropriate for them to come out and shoot off their mouths about the latest and greatest they have, unless and until they are ready to arrest somebody else. And when they are, if they are, on Transtifa, we're all ears. Then they will provide some basic modicum of evidence to support the arresting affidavit, the arrest indictment. That's how this works. By the way, criminal prosecutors have an ethical obligation not to spout off about their evidence in the case. We actually pulled this morning, just in case you were wondering. Rule 3.8 of the ABA model rules restricts prosecutors from making extrajudicial statements that heighten public condemnation. Remember when Fani Willis did that about Donald Trump and his defense lawyers too, or like spouting off about how race was at issue in this case? It was completely inappropriate. And we argued that correctly at the time. So I don't know how we spun from that into we're allowed to spew conspiracy theories about the case because the FBI is not saying anything. That's just backwards. It's not true, okay? It's not. The rules are the same in all the cases, including this one. Now, here's what happened in court. Tyler Robinson went in there charged with aggravated murder and felony use of a firearm, as well as other charges. And what they argued about yesterday was media rights in this case. And by the way, media rights in this case are extremely important, okay? Because neither the prosecution nor the defense are fighting for us to be in there. Neither probably wants us. The prosecutor has acknowledged we may have a limited right. That's not it. Sorry, prosecutor. We have a full right. We're the eyes and ears of the people. You're not, and Judge Graff, you're not going to keep the press out of this courtroom. Maybe you're going to succeed in keeping cameras out. You shouldn't, because they're allowed in Utah, but you shouldn't. But you're not going to keep the press out of this courtroom. I'm sorry to break it to you. We have every right to be in there. This is a public proceeding, and we will be in there. And we will be documenting every word of this trial, no matter how badly the defense attorneys, who are really the ones pushing for it, want us out. We represent the people. And the people have every right to be in there to watch what happens in this case. So what's happening right now in that courtroom is a legal fight over whether the press is even going to be given notice of the hearings that concern the press's right to be present at the hearings and the trial of this case. They're not even sure we get to be there when they argue over our access rights. That's effed up too. We'll see what this Judge Graff rules. But right now, he's keeping a very tight lid on even those arguments. And it's somewhat infuriating, as you can hear in my voice. There are issues of public access to this case that need to be protected. And if this judge rules that somehow the press must be excluded from anything other than sealed proceedings, things that must be kept under seal, he's going to be reversed. There was an issue yesterday stemming from an October 24th hearing, which was closed to the public, about courtroom security, media coverage, and Robinson's ability to wear civilian clothing. Media organizations yesterday wanted a transcript of that hearing, but attorneys for Robinson and for the state of Utah have proposed certain redactions to the transcript. An attorney for the Media Coalition, which is good, we have our own media attorney, Michael Judd, urged the judge to let the news organizations weigh in on any future requests that would limit our access. And that's what they were fighting about. The defense also asked Judge Graff to ban cameras from the courtroom completely, citing a content tornado that could permanently devastate the jury pool. We have had jury pools overwhelmed with information about cases for years, ever since the dawn of court TV and of O.J. Simpson and so on. And we've managed it, sometimes well, sometimes poorly, but we've managed it. There are ways of managing cameras in the courtroom. They were about to do this with Brian Kohlberger, who at that point was much more infamous than Tyler Robinson. And it was going to be managed with cameras in the courtroom, and it can be managed here as well. There was an issue yesterday because the media inadvertently showed Tyler Robinson's shackles. And there's a question about whether that's going to taint the jury pool. It's not. The media apologized for doing it. It was inadvertent. But the jurors, the potential jurors, understand that the defendant is perceived as a potentially dangerous human because he's on trial for assassinating someone. Let's not pretend the glimpse at his shackles changed anybody's mind whatsoever about Tyler Robinson. For what it's worth, Erica Kirk has made clear she wants cameras in this courtroom. She points out cameras captured her husband's murder, and everyone has seen that video. And why would we not allow it here? There is a disturbing news item today out of KUTV, which is the local CBS station in Salt Lake City, that we are possibly missing, the surveillance video of Tyler Robinson turning himself in. The media tried to get that video with a FOIA request. Again, this is public information. And apparently they were told that it may not be available. Like the standard response from the sheriff's office was, we do not have any records responsive to this portion of the request, as Tyler Robinson did not go to or enter the jail area. They had asked for a jail area or holding area video of Robinson when he'd turned himself in. And that's what a records office with the sheriff's office told the media, subpoenaing it, or FOIAing it, I should say. A few weeks later, 2 News re-upped the request in a more generalized fashion, asking for surveillance video showing Tyler Robinson walking into Washington County Sheriff's Office, just walking in. And the response came, our office does not have any applicable records responsive to this, as the surveillance footage is no longer available after the 30-day retention period. That suggests it's been deleted. When asked if the video was shared with any law enforcement or legal agency, the department responded, it is my understanding that it was never sent out to any agency. And that certainly makes it sound like they deleted this file if it ever existed. A defense attorney, criminal defense attorney generic, that 2 News asked about this out in Utah, a guy by the name of Rudy Bautista, defense attorney of 26 years in Utah who works on capital cases, said, for the state of Utah, we would certainly hope this video is available. If in fact it's been destroyed and is not preserved, it's very concerning. And if it has, then it's very concerning that they're telling you they don't have it. If they no longer have it, I would have expected them to say that the video has been provided to the Utah County law enforcement, but instead the letter leads, in my opinion, as trying to shut the door and not give you free access to this information. Video of Robinson turning himself in, he adds, would be crucial for the defense work of mitigation. So we'll see whether that actually winds up surfacing, but I agree it's disturbing if it's been deleted. So I look at the media and I have no quarter for them. I do think they're very much part of the problem. And it's why on the Jimmy Kimmel thing, I have no tears to shed for him, even if the FCC were involved. Which again, they made a threat. They didn't actually get involved. They didn't actually pull somebody's license or send a letter saying, give me all the justifications or I'm going to pull your license under the following couple of provisions. And believe me, I spent the weekend looking up what authority, if any, the FCC has if it wanted to actually pull the license of ABC. And we'll get to that a little later this week. But it's why I can't work up any tears over what's happening to him, because the media, they control everything. They control all the messaging, all the messaging. What would life have been like? Would Charlie have lived? Would Trump not have gotten shot if we didn't have a media that was constantly telling us that they both are fascists, that they both are Nazis, how divisive they both are? If we didn't have a media that cheered the 4 indictments and pretended they were real, and that Trump had really obviously committed a bunch of crimes, that didn't actually try to convince us he raped some woman who couldn't even remember the alleged year in which she was raped. Like, would we? It's amazing to watch all these people, especially not for nothing, young black men, all over my X feed, post videos talking about how they've watched endless Charlie Kirk clips and they are now declaring themselves conservative and Republican. They've seen the truth. They're sick of the lying media. And they've watched clip after clip. And if you watch clip after clip of Charlie, you do get to know him. Some have pointed out he was slightly more caustic on his radio show. I agree with that. That's fine. He was more pointed on his radio show and he was just opining about issues of the day. But face to face with people who disagreed with him, he could not have been more respectful. Are you that way? If you have a disagreement with the other side and you're actually dealing with them face to face, yeah, you might be kinder. You might, like on a radio show, you might have said something a little bit more caustic. Does that make you a bad person? No. You should be judged by how you treat the people when you're with them. And Charlie treated leftists who hated his guts with respect. And young men in particular, but also some women, are seeing it. Leftists who are now declaring themselves conservative and on the right. I saw a graphic. It was like a cartoon on X yesterday, and it showed like a fork in the road and one path leading to the right and one path leading to the left. And on the left, there was one body. And over on the right, it's like a little cartoon. And over on the right, it was all filled with bodies, people walking. And it was basically saying the country after Charlie Kirk's assassination. And I think that's exactly right. People are looking not only at the fact that he got killed by an obvious leftist. By the way, so says his own mom, okay? But the leftist reaction to it, the refusal to condemn it, to be honest about it. It's the worst case of gaslighting we've seen in years. And that's saying something because we've been gaslit. I mean, COVID was a massive gaslighting on many issues. That's just one off the top of my head. So that's why the media is squarely within my own crosshairs here. And hey, New York Times, if you're paying attention, I don't mean gun sites. They tried to suggest Sarah Palin was responsible for Gabby Gifford's shooting because she used the term crosshairs. I mean my focus, because you are absolutely part of the problem and you're a big part of the problem. It's not trivial. So what's happened over the past couple of days is the media has decided to make this all about them because that's what they do. I got a couple of examples. I'll go through them. I want to start with CNN's Ashley Allison. She's always out there saying inane things. Truly, she's constantly saying really stupid things. I don't know why CNN employs her. Well, actually, I think I do. Here she is, SOT 20.
Things that Charlie Kirk said drastically offended me. I have yet to have actually one person ask me why, if they agreed with those things. It is very clear that Charlie Kirk should not have been murdered. But why not have a conversation with me and say, why did that upset you? Mm-hmm. And take the moment to listen and not have a comeback. And then I should ask the question about why did you really like the things that Charlie Kirk said?
No one's asked about me. Me. Hold on. Me. Yeah, that's her. What about me? Why aren't you asking about me to figure out because no one gives a shit? That's why. That's why. I've quoted this woman a couple times now. I love her. We got to get a button for this lady. She's all over X. Maybe you've seen her. She's this fabulous black woman somewhere in her mid-50s because she always described herself as menopausal. And she started the We Do Not Care Club. She's still got a highlighter in her hair. She's got a notebook that's like she's constantly flipping pages in and like doing her highlighting on it. And she goes to the We Do Not Care Club. And, she says, we do not care that you're cold. Like, we're sweating and you're going to have to suffer, whatever it is. We do not care that the laundry is sitting on the couch unfolded. Like, too bad. Deal with it. We have other things to do. She's hilarious. And I have news for Ashley. We do not care. That is why we're not asking you why you didn't like Charlie, how you've been affected by Charlie's assassination. Things that Charlie Kirk said drastically offended me. I have yet to have actually one person ask me why. We do not care. Okay? Then there's Karen Attiah. We talked about her a week ago. She wrote for the Washington Post. She was a columnist there and for the New York Times before that. She is the one who, literally, he was either on 10/7 or on 10/8, tweeted out, retweeted, or liked a tweet that read, "This is what decolonization looks like." We had 1,200 dead Israelis. We had elderly people dead. We had babies and children dead and taken hostage. We had young women raped and taken hostage. And she said, I like that tweet. This is what decolonization looks like. And the Washington Post kept employing her. It's the left. It's her side that constantly uses that term dehumanize, dehumanization. You've dehumanized me. Do you remember that one time back on Fox when I said Santa's white? I actually had some young black woman come up to me and say, I felt dehumanized. Madam, that's your problem, not mine. If you can let some random comment about Santa by a Fox News anchor make you feel less than human, that's a you problem. And honestly, that side that's so worried about dehumanization had no problem with Karen Attiah, the Washington Post columnist, looking at dead babies and saying, this is what decolonization looks like. Yeah, right on. They did not fire her. She kept her job. But she lost it in the wake of Charlie's assassination because she got, she got out there and she tweeted a couple things, posted on Blue Sky. What am I saying? She wouldn't tweet anything, because she's not on X anymore. Here's what she said. Refusing to tear my clothes and smear ashes on my face in performative mourning for a white man that espoused violence is not the same as violence. And then she tweeted, part of what keeps America so violent is the insistence that people perform care, empty goodness, and absolution for white men who espouse hatred and violence. She's pissed because she felt like people were insisting that she act like she cared about a white man who espoused hatred and violence who got murdered on camera in front of her eyes. There is a level of inhumanity in this person that should be totally intolerable for any employer. Not just the Washington Post. Who the hell would want to sit? What if you're a white man at the Washington Post? And by the way, it's owned by a white man. Why would you sit next to that? She's a lunatic. No one should employ her. Who would? Why would you? Maybe the UN will hire Karen Attiah. That seems like a good place for her to land. But this is insane, this person. So she goes on with Jim Acosta and gives an interview and listen to what's on her mind about the whole thing. Stop 21.
And I just wonder if you could lay out your thoughts on where you are right now and maybe explain a little bit what happened, because you were pushed out essentially for what you said about Charlie Kirk.
Yeah, and well, thank you so much. I think you were actually the first one to reach out.
Oh, wow.
It actually, I'm still processing, but it's actually been, I have not been able to land a one-on-one on a major network.
No.
You're the first Substack one. I went on with Don Lemon. You guys have been the only ones seemingly brave enough to
oh my Lord.
have me on. So I also just want to say thank you. You have no idea how much this means to me. And
Yeah.
Like, I think it's just sadly a sign of the times for mainstream media, not just in this moment and the culture of fear, I think, but also
Yes.
where the truth tellers are finding themselves having to go.
Okay, my head is hurting. He's the only one brave enough to play. I have the answer that you're looking for, Karen. The reason no one has asked you for an interview is because really no one gives a shit about your story. Literally the only reason I raised your story is because I outed you for liking that tweet right after 10/7. So you've become a bit of a storyline on this show for your inhumanity. And this is just more proof of it. That's why you're here. The reason only Jim Acosta and Don Lemon will talk to you is because you're a nobody. No one knows who you are. You behaved like a terrible person. And finally it caught up with you and we're thrilled. It's justice. And even your mainstream media colleagues have absolutely no time for your terrible behavior. That's how irrelevant you've rendered yourself. So congrats. Good luck in obscurity. Hope you enjoy Substack. Tom Homan, the president's border czar, in an early morning press conference announcing Minnesota's top Democrats might be bending a little on their sanctuary city policies. I'll believe it when I see it. We haven't heard anything from them. I love Tom Homan. I'm not saying he's being insincere. I just don't trust. Do you trust Jacob Fry? I refuse to call him Jacob Frey. I won't. He's like a Fannie Willis to me. It's Fry. I don't trust him. All he's been saying is we will not assist. We're not helping federal immigration policy, which is exactly what his sanctuary city policy says. He's being totally consistent with the will of his voters and the policy that's in place right now in Minneapolis. So, I mean, Tom Homan says he's changing. He says Keith Ellison, the state attorney general, has said that this is an okay thing to do, to have the county and city jails now let ICE know if they have a criminal in custody who's about to get released, who also has an ICE detainer on them, something they haven't been doing. Okay, is this mayor actually going to do that? Because all we keep hearing from him is, no, I'm not doing that. And we've been looking for his reaction. We've been updating the Minneapolis Star-Tribune to see if he's spoken out with them. I don't see him saying that. I see Homan saying that the AG Ellison, who's in hot water of his own, thanks to the fraud scandal there, has said that it can happen. I mean, I have a legal opinion from Keith Ellison that he issued not long ago saying it's contrary to law for them to do that it's contrary to law in Minnesota for the local jails to hold any detainee, any criminal, longer than they're supposed to be held in order to facilitate an apprehension by ICE. He says it violates the Fourth Amendment. So I guess under Keith Ellison's interpretation, what has to happen is the county and city jailers have to make sure as the detainee, as the criminal, like whatever, you're an illegal, you get arrested for DWI, you're sitting in the county jail, you bail out, now you're about to get released. What the Ellison legal opinion that's already on the book says is you cannot hold him any longer to call ICE and say, hey, he turns out to be an illegal. We're about to send him back out onto the streets. Do you want to come get him? Because you got a detainer against him. They don't do that in Minneapolis. They do that in all cities that are not sanctuaries. And now Homan's saying, okay, we reached an agreement with Ellison that they're going to help us now. So I guess is the distinction they've got to call ICE before the guy actually gets the bail, because under this Ellison legal opinion, they're not allowed to hold him for 1 minute longer than when they're supposed to be released. So what exactly is happening? I mean, I love that we're saying, we've reached an accommodation. I'd love to hear from the guy who actually has to do it, the mayor of Minneapolis, who's a complete prick and has zero interest in helping enforce federal immigration law. And by the way, just in case you missed what really happened today, what really happened was in an effort to take down the temperature, which was raised by these agitators on the street, Trump said, we're going to give up on anybody who's not a criminal. I know Tom Homan said we're not doing that. I know he said No, we'll still, we'll go after the ones who aren't like also criminals on top of being illegals. We will. Like, he basically made it sound like if we encounter them, we're going to get them. But the mission has changed. Don't fool yourself. Tom Homan went in. There was a divide between Kristi Noem and Corey Lewandowski reportedly on the one side and Tom Homan on the other, and a couple of others who are in his camp on who we should be going after. And Noem and Lewandowski wanted it to be everyone. Illegals who are here, period. And yes, we should prioritize the criminals, but like we should also be getting the illegals. That's what we were elected to do. And Tom Homan's general approach has been, and I understand it because we only have limited resources, worst first, the worst first. Let's prioritize the criminals. And now, believe me, it appears that the accommodation we've reached with these locals is we are just going to go after the criminals. And when Tom Homan was specifically asked, what about the others? Like, he was like, oh, no, they're still technically on the agenda. Oh, I mean, I'll play you the sound as we go through the opening. You'll decide for yourselves. I'm sorry, but that's not what we voted for. We actually did vote for all of them to get out. And so this is a win for these protesters. That it is. Like the president's ardent defenders are going to try to spin it as like, no, it's not. He hasn't given an inch. He's tripling down. No, he isn't. He isn't. I mean, it was very clear. And I love Tom Homan. He's doing the president's bidding. The president decided to turn down the heat because his poll numbers are falling on this. I get it. I get it all. But I'm not going to lie to you about what's happening. Administration officials may try to spin you. That's not happening here. So now we're going to prioritize just the illegals, just the ones who have committed an additional crime. And we are also drawing down the number of officers who are in Minneapolis in exchange for this alleged cooperation. Where's the Minneapolis mayor? Where's his statement? Okay, because Keith Ellison is the state attorney general. The state of Minnesota has already been cooperating in this way. We explained this to you yesterday. The state isn't technically a sanctuary state, though it has many sanctuary policies. It's the cities and the counties around Minnesota who have been refusing to cooperate with ICE. So it's great for Keith Ellison, who again is himself at the center of this fraud scandal involving all the Somalis. We played you the tape of him working with them, trying to say, oh, this isn't a big deal and how can I help you and so on. He's exposed. He denies wrongdoing. He's there saying, okay, we'll cut a deal where, we'll let these locals help you. Okay, you're gonna let them? I mean, you have a legal opinion saying they can't under the Fourth Amendment, and also the local officials are not saying that they're on board. So that's where we are. A new year means new financial goals, like making sure your savings are secure and diversified. Will this be the year you decide to talk to someone from Birch Gold Group? They use an educational approach with a deep understanding of macroeconomics. There are forces pushing the dollar lower and gold higher, which is why they believe every American should own physical gold. So until January 30th, if you're a first-time gold buyer, Birch Gold is offering a rebate of up to $10,000 on qualifying purchases. To claim eligibility and start the process, just text MK to the number 989898. Birch Gold can help you roll an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold, and you are still eligible for a rebate of up to $10,000. Consider making right now your first time to buy gold and take advantage of a rebate up to $10,000 when you buy by January 30th. Text MK to the number 989898. Claim your eligibility today. Again, just text MK to the number 989898. At the same time, there's a stunning, it's not really surprising, but it's stunning in its own way, new video of what the left's latest hero, their latest poster boy for decent, law-abiding observer, Alex Preddy, was in fact up to the week before his fatal shooting by Border Patrol officers last Saturday. We've heard a lot about how Preddy was just an innocent protester, a caring nurse, just making his voice heard in opposition to Trump's evil deportation policies. There were reports that Preddy had, we opened our show with this on Tuesday, a previous confrontation with federal officers. And now we have the video and we have it from two different angles, and they're very, very telling. Turns out it happened on January 13th in Minneapolis around 10:15 a.m., 11 days before the fatal shooting. The video was filmed by a media outlet called The News Movement. The footage was first verified by the BBC, and later Preddy's parents confirmed that it's him in the video. And let me just tell you something. As soon as this hit, you had the left realizing this is a terrible video for their side because they're trying to lionize this guy and make him into Mother Teresa. Immediately saying, it's fake. Never heard of this news movement. How do you know it's the BBC? I mean, truly, you should see, like, I posted it almost immediately. All my comments from leftists. Are we sure this is BBC? How do we know? Is it real? The guy's parents have verified it's him in the video. So you're going to have to find a different defense, leftists, and deal with reality. He was an agitator. He was a terrorist. Honestly, like Kristi Noem took all sorts of shit for saying he was a domestic terrorist. Yeah, he qualifies. He was terrorizing those ICE agents. I'm not excusing the other shit she said. He went there with an intent to kill the law. No. But that term, and you may recall all week long, I have said I'm not going to drag her on that term because we don't actually know the full extent of what Alex Preddy was doing out there. Like, I'm actually still open-minded on that term. Well, now we see this video. What would you call it? Watch.
This is a moment the news movement filmed on January 13th in Minneapolis, showing a man who appears to be Alex Preddy interacting with federal immigration agents 11 days before Border Patrol shot and killed him. Our footage was analyzed by the BBC, whose facial recognition technology confirmed his identity to a 97% degree of accuracy. On the morning of January 13th, our team received a tip that federal agents were blocking a street at the corner of East 36 and Park Avenue in Minneapolis. We arrived around 10:15 a.m. We saw observers shouting at the agents as they walked back to their vehicles. When they started driving away, the man kicked their taillight. An agent then got out of the vehicle, grabbed him, and pushed him to the ground. During the altercation, agents fired tear gas and pepper balls into the crowd. They continued to hold the man down before they retreat and he walks away. The man in our footage is wearing a similar outfit to what Preddy was wearing on the day he was killed. What appears to be a gun is also visible above his waistband.
A gun visible in his waistband. So he was out there with his gun and his anger, trying to terrorize, actively harassing law enforcement, federal law enforcement, actually spitting on and attacking federal law enforcement. He was dressed exactly as he was on the day he was shot and killed. 11 days later, he smashed their vehicle's taillight in the process, angrily kicking it out. The whole thing came out of the back of the car and fell on the ground. And for the viewing audience, take a look at your screen. Preddy was armed in this confrontation too. You can clearly see his gun in his belt as he went out there and menaced these officers. Now, virtually every Second Amendment lover and expert I know has been trying to make the point this week to the people who say, oh, you can't just kill somebody because he's got a gun. Of course not. Of course, and no one here has ever suggested that. But what the Second Amendment experts and advocates have been making clear this week is that when you are carrying, you have a heightened duty, not a lower one. You have an extra duty to avoid confrontation, not a lesser one. And especially if you're going to get in the face of law enforcement who are armed, who are under attack, and who have been harassed and tortured every day, all day by agitated, angry, maniacal protesters with the whistles and the cars blocking them and making sure they can't sleep at night in their hotels with the nonstop noise and screaming in their faces, trying to dox them, biting off the finger, attacking them with shovels, bleeding out of their mouths and noses as they try to protect one another. Okay, so especially if you are going to be confronting one of them and you know you're armed, you have a heightened duty to avoid confrontation. And certainly if it starts to go there, to make very clear upfront that you are armed. so you don't take anybody by surprise. He did none of that. He, in fact, literally begged them to assault him, okay? That's what's happened here. If there was any doubt whether Alex Preddy was seeking to provoke federal officers, take a look at the second angle of the January 13th confrontation. You can clearly hear him literally urge the federal officers to assault him in a profanity-laced tirade.
Fuck you! Fuck out of here! Fuck you!
That's him. Fuck you.
What the fuck is wrong with you?
That's him yelling.
Everything you made in your life is fucking wrong. Look at you! Pepper spray, bitch! Fucking assault me, motherfucker!
Fucking assault me, motherfucker.
You guys! Fucking trash! Fucking trash!
Spits on the cop. Toward the cop. Kicks the cop's car.
Fuck you!
Double middle finger. Now the law enforcement officer, Border Patrol, gets out and confronts him. There's a physical confrontation in which he reportedly broke a rib. But he was literally begging. This is not hyperbole. This is not me using a figure of speech. He was literally saying, fuck you, fucking assault me, motherfucker. I mean, it's right there. All you need are a clear pair of ears to understand exactly what Alex Preddy wanted. And he got it. Not exactly the type of guy the Democrats and the media have been telling us he was this entire week. Watch.
Alex Preddy died as he lived, protecting his neighbors. In a country run by cowards, be like Alex Preddy.
You ask us for peace and we give it, and we get shot in the face on the streets coming out of a donut shop.
As his mom described him and dad, he was a kind-hearted soul, and they've asked us to tell the truth about him.
We can never thank our nurses enough. And the one thing I know about Alex Preddy's life is that he was never thanked enough.
Where he seems to be helping up a woman who has fallen.
And a nurse who stepped in to protect a woman from harm.
And all he was doing was helping someone, a woman who'd been pushed over into the snow.
No matter how hard people tried to thank him, because we, the patients, can never find the words big enough to express our gratitude and love to our nurses.
Oh my God. This is ridiculous. Yeah, they love the nurses like this one, fucking assault me, like the ones we've been featuring on the show this week, who want Caroline Levitt to have a grade 4 tear, who want nurse anesthetists to put suctional choline, which paralyzes you and would kill you if you weren't under the active care of an anesthesiologist, into the veins of ICE agents. So there's Lawrence O'Donnell. This guy, Alex, he was just a nurse we didn't thank enough. That's all. Just a sweet nurse wanting to help people. And check out what the idiot over at The View, one of them, Anna Navarro said on CNN.
They killed the wrong guy, right? Because this is like the perfect guy. Alex Preddy is the guy you would want to date your daughter. The guy you would want your son to grow up to be.
No. It's a no. I don't know what kind of guy Anna Navarro wants women in her family to date, but no, we do not. Sane people want our children to grow up to be anything like Alex Preddy, and we certainly don't want our sons to grow into him. We do know for certain that he is the kind of guy who would spit on a cop and smash a law enforcement vehicle while armed and beg federal officers to assault him. He wanted his little viral moment. And let me tell you something, he got a taste of the little fame, like he enjoyed it. I'm sure he was a hero amongst all of his little protester, rioter, terrorist types out there on that street corner. And he went right back out there looking for another confrontation. And it got him killed. It got him killed. Do you think, think about it. If you had a gun on you and you wound up getting in a confrontation with 6 Border Patrol agents, don't you think you'd be saying, I surrender, I have a gun, I give up, please don't hurt me, anything. That's not what happened. He was enjoying it. He wanted the confrontation. He was out there literally asking for it. All right, we've got something very interesting to start with today. The case against James Comey just got a lot hotter. So he's moved to have it dismissed. Just to set the scene for our audience, okay? There's a 2-page indictment against him. It's pretty straightforward. And they allege in the Eastern District of Virginia that on or about September 30th, 2020, James Comey willfully and knowingly lied to Congress, telling a U.S. senator that he, James Comey, had not authorized someone at the FBI to be an anonymous source in news reports regarding an FBI investigation. Okay, so that's basically what the whole thing is based on, and there's really not much more to the indictment than that. 2 counts that we think are based on just that one allegation that he lied to Congress in September of 2020. Now, in September of 2020, what happened was in an exchange with Ted Cruz, Jim Comey reaffirmed testimony he gave to Chuck Grassley 3 years earlier in 2017 and doubled down on those assertions that he had not leaked to the media about an FBI investigation and he had not authorized a person at the FBI to leak to the media about any investigation into Trump or Hillary. And I'm just going to play you those testimonials just so we're really clear, all right? First, we're going to go in chronological order here because they're both at issue very much in this case against him. Here he is in 2017. The date was May 3rd, speaking under oath to Senator Chuck Grassley. Listen.
Director Comey, have you ever been an anonymous source in news reports about matters relating to the Trump investigation or the Clinton investigation?
Never.
Have you ever authorized someone else at the FBI to be an anonymous source in news reports about the Trump investigation or the Clinton investigation?
No.
Has any classified information relating to President Trump or his associates been declassified and shared with the media?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, so it's that middle question that is at issue. He very clearly testified. Yet the question was, have you ever authorized someone else at the FBI to be an anonymous source in news reports about the Trump investigation or the Hillary investigation? Answer, no. Now, that was May 3rd, 2017, which was just a couple months after the period of June 2015 through February 2017, where his good friend Daniel Richman, who was a Columbia law professor, had been deputized by Comey to act as a special governmental employee at the FBI on Comey's behalf, who he used to both advise him, James Comey, and now we do know, to leak to the media. Okay, so this testimonial to Grassley was post that, year and a half period where he had been using Daniel Richman to leak to the media. So it would appear to be a very clear lie. He had been using him. He'd been using him for a year and a half, and the guy had been an employee at the FBI, special governmental employee. And that's what Grassley asked. Ever authorized someone else at the FBI to be an anonymous source in news reports about Trump investigation or Hillary? So he said that. He said in May of 17, no, never did. Then Ted Cruz, it's a little convoluted. Hold on to your armrests there. Gets them to double down on it 3 years later in 2020, September 2020. And the only reason they used the September 2020 exchange with Cruz as the basis for the indictment is because the 17 exchange is barred as time limited. The 5-year statute of limitations on that lie ran out. But he renewed his lie to Ted Cruz. It's more convoluted, but it's there. I urge you to listen to this exchange, but pay attention, most importantly, to the last part of it. Listen.
On May 3rd, 2017, in this committee, Chairman Grassley asked you point blank, quote, have you ever been an anonymous source in news reports about matters relating to the Trump investigation or the Clinton investigation? You responded under oath, quote, never. He then asked you, quote, have you ever authorized someone else at the FBI to be an anonymous source in news reports about the Trump investigation or the Clinton administration? You responded again under oath, no. Now, as you know, Mr. McCabe, who works for you, has publicly and repeatedly stated that he leaked information to the Wall Street Journal and that you were directly aware of it and that you directly authorized it. Now, what Mr. McCabe is saying and what you testified to this committee cannot both be true. One or the other is false. Who's telling the truth?
I can only speak to my testimony. I stand by what the testimony you summarized that I gave in May of 2017.
So your testimony is you've never authorized anyone to leak. And Mr. McCabe, if he says contrary, is not telling the truth. Is that correct?
Again, I'm not going to characterize Andy's testimony, but mine is the same today.
Mine is the same today, which is a very good hook for prosecutors to say, not only did he reaffirm the testimony as of 2017, but he expanded it from 2017 forward to 2020. So both time periods would be covered, where James Comey is on the record saying he never authorized someone to leak on his behalf while at the FBI. Okay, that's clearly his testimony. In any event, there's no doubt he stood by that Grassley testimony, at least through his testimony on May 3rd, 2017. So if he did authorize somebody to leak for him at the FBI prior to May 3rd, 2017, they've got him. They've got him. And we were speculating when the indictment first came out, who's the indictment even talking about? You heard, Ted Cruz there was talking about Andy McCabe, who worked for him. Was that who it was? Or was it somebody else? Was it the Trump investigation? Was it the Hillary? Who knows? And now it appears, I don't want to limit them, but it appears that at least we have clear evidence that Comey did use Daniel Richman, who was an employee of the FBI, again, from June 2015 through February 2017, to leak to the media about the Hillary Clinton email investigation prior to the time he denied it under oath to Chuck Grassley. The reason I say that is today in the news is an explosive report from John Solomon based on documents provided by Kash Patel at the FBI that they found at the FBI that show correspondence between James Comey and Daniel Richman, his BFF and employee for that year and a half, making clear Comey wanted Richman to leak and that Richman did then act as an anonymous source to the New York Times and possibly others. All right. And we'll just go through a couple of them. First, he points out, this is Mike Davis summarizing some of it. Comey had a burner Gmail, which he named himself Reinhold Niebuhr. I don't know who that is, Victor. Yeah, you're a historian. Does that name ring a bell to you?
Yes, it does. He was a very famous Protestant clergyman, public intellectual in the United States. He was the father of Elizabeth Sifton, the head editor for a while at Alfred Knopf, and at one time my book editor, so it's kind of a coincidence you asked that. But he was very well known as a voice of morality in America. So
smart. I love that you knew that.
Yeah, sanctimonious Comey would always try to identify with a higher moral authority.
Okay, so that's his alias. And he's corresponding with his BFF, Daniel Richman. And okay, I'm going to try to make this clear. It's not that easy. Hold on. First, just to set the scene for the audience again, it was October 28th, 2016 that Comey wrote a letter saying that the FBI had discovered new emails relevant to the Hillary Clinton use of private email servers. That was just like a few days before the election. That was in July of 2016, Comey came out and he was like, Hillary sucks. She has a private homebrew server. It's very problematic, but we're not going to indict her because we can't meet certain elements of a crime. And Republicans were pissed. Like, she should be indicted. Then October comes around, and we're just like a week before the vote now. And he says, we found more emails on Anthony Weiner's laptop, who's married to Huma Abedin, who was Hillary's right-hand person. And then the Democrats lost their mind, saying, this is election interference by the FBI, which works for the DOJ, days before an election. And Comey's like, I had to tell people. I kind of exonerated her in July, And then just before the election, now I find all these other emails. And look, I felt a moral obligation to tell America we did find other stuff. And you can hear him. He's upset because then the left-wing press went nuts on him. And the left-wing press was important to James Comey, who wanted them to love him. And what he's doing is using Daniel Richman to massage the press into thinking Comey was moral, like you point out, like this Reinhold Niebuhr, that he did the right thing. And he's writing to his BFF here about how, look, you know, I did something noble, saying first his friend says, do you want me to respond, basically? And then Comey responds from his burner account, no need. At this point, it would be shouting into the wind. Someday they'll figure it out. And as Jack and Ben point out, I don't know who that is, my decision will be one a President-elect Clinton will be very grateful for, though that wasn't why I did it. So he's anticipating Hillary's going to win and that ultimately, after she wins, she'll forgive him for doing the October thing. The next day, Daniel Richman sent Comey an email regarding an op-ed he'd been asked to write for the New York Times about the Comey letter regarding Hillary's emails. Richman stated he was not inclined to write something, but that he would if Comey thought it would help things to explain that the defendant owed Congress absolute candor and that Comey's credibility with Congress would be particularly important in the coming years of threatened congressional investigations. That's when Comey wrote back, no need. It would be shouting into the wind. Someday they'll figure it out. And Hillary Clinton, president-elect, will be very grateful for me having done this. Then Comey appears to have reconsidered that view very shortly thereafter, alleges the government. On November 1st, 2016, he emailed Daniel Richman again, saying, when I read the Times coverage involving Reporter One, I'm left with a sense that they don't understand the significance of my having spoken about this case in July. It changes the entire analysis, meaning he's like, his point is, having said something in July about how she can't be charged, I owed it to the public to update my statements in October when I found the Anthony Weiner laptop. And then he says to Daniel Richman, perhaps you can make him smarter. And Comey goes on about why he's so noble and this needs to be explained to the press. My inactivity was not an option here. The choices were act to reveal or act to conceal. Richman responds the next day stating, this is precisely the case I made to them and thought they understood. I was quite wrong. Indeed, I went further and said mindless allegiance to the policy and recognition that more evidence could come in would have counseled silence in July to have let Hillary twist in the wind. Richman emailed Comey shortly thereafter writing, I just got the point home to Reporter One, who we think was Michael Schmidt of the New York Times. Probably was rougher than you would have been. Then Comey emails Richman shortly thereafter, entitling the message, pretty good, sending a link to the New York Times piece regarding the defendants, Comey's purported options in late October 2016 about the Clinton email investigation. Comey wrote, someone showed some logic. I would paint the cons that I was facing in not disclosing more darkly, but not bad. So this clearly he says to Richman here, Victor, perhaps you can make him smarter in writing this piece. Then he writes the piece, and we have the piece, by the way, from the New York Times, where they weigh exactly what Comey had to do with the pros and the cons. And Richman says, okay, I just got the point home. I was rougher than you would have been. And then Comey forwards him the piece saying someone shows some logic, forwarding the piece to him, with which Richman participated at Comey's behest. It was a shock. It was a shock to see Judge Louis Lyman of the U.S. District Court in Manhattan dismiss Justin's lawsuit. Just as a reminder of how this case got started, Blake Lively went to the California Human Rights Office, the California Civil Rights Department, and she filed a legal proceeding there to try to get Justin Baldoni in some trouble and trying to sound the alarm that he was some sort of a sexual predator. And very clearly, she then provided that document to the New York Times, and they ran with it. And using the allegations of that complaint, they painted him in a very irresponsible piece as a sexual predator, basically just taking the words of Blake Lively, allegations unproven from that document, and perhaps other statements as well, though exactly what else she provided remains unclear. It should have been exposed in the discovery process, where Baldoni will have the opportunity, or would have, to depose Blake Lively, to depose the New York Times, and figure out exactly what happened, how they got their hands on it, what additional statements were made by Blake Lively and or her team to the Times before they ran with that piece. That's now not going to happen because the Times has been dismissed as a defendant and with no leave to refile. So that was on December 20th that we saw that complaint, and the Times then ran an article. By the 31st of December this past year, Blake Lively sued Justin Baldoni, and Justin Baldoni also filed suit against the New York Times, alleging that that piece defamed him. And then 2 weeks later, on January 16th, Justin Baldoni sued Blake Lively, sued Ryan Reynolds, and sued this PR agent, Leslie Sloan, and her company. What's happened this week is this federal district court judge reviewing what's called a 12B6 motion, a motion to dismiss the case without even getting to discovery, never mind trial, has granted that motion filed by Lively and the other defendants against Baldoni. His entire case against her has been thrown out, except for two minor claims for breach of the implied covenant and tortious interference with a contract. So implied covenant of good faith and fair dealing and the tortious interference with a contract, which are based on one smaller allegation made in the in the Justin Baldoni complaint, suggesting that I think this one is based on the fact that Ryan Reynolds allegedly went to WME, this large agency where Ari Emanuel is the owner and chief agent, and said, you need to dump Justin Baldoni as a client, and that he did it. And I believe Ari Emanuel has admitted this happened. I think he was on a podcast admitting that this happened. And the question is whether that can amount to the tortious interference with the contract between Justin Baldoni and WME. Even if they win on that, it's peanuts. Okay, that's not, I'm just being honest with you. As you know, I'm on, having looked at this very closely, I believe Justin Baldoni is the truth teller by and large in this case, and that Blake Lively has either exaggerated or made up the overwhelming substance of her complaint. She wanted to save her own ass after suffering some bad publicity, and she's orchestrated this whole thing, which she thought would give her an I am woman, hear me roar moment. And now, thanks to this judge, she's sort of getting it. But that's what I think this whole thing is about, not about actual harassment by Justin Baldoni of Blake Lively. As we've seen, her complaint against him has fallen apart. I mean, just piece by piece, her scurrilous allegations of what he did to her have proven, in my clear view as an attorney, to be lies. I believe she lied. I believe she lied when she complained that he burst in on her while she was breastfeeding in her trailer. And then we've seen the correspondence between the two of them where she says, come on over, I'm breastfeeding. I mean, okay, it seems you only told us half the story, madam. She was forced to look at porn by these evil producers working with Justin. And they responded that, in fact, and they produced the pictures, what they wanted her to look at was a totally benign, not even PG-13. It's like a G-rated photograph of the producer and his wife in a bathtub after a bathtub birth. No nudity. It's like a beautiful shot of a new baby with the parents. It's like she's insane. This is not pornography by anybody's definition. Now, maybe when we get to trial, she's going to show us some XXX porn that they threatened to show her or did show her. I doubt it. She hasn't exactly held back in trying to rehabilitate her image. So those are just a couple of examples of how her claim in chief is falling apart. But in any event, Justin tried to fight back by saying she's now trying to smear me, in addition to like not being able to handle some bad PR around the launch of this movie that she brought upon herself, and blame it all on me. Now she's gone next level by trying to smear me by filing this complaint with the Civil Rights Division in California, by clearly leaking it to the New York Times, and trying to let the country know I'm some sort of a sexual predator, all of which is false. So he fought back. And he fought back not only by going, into a PR stance and unleashing Brian Friedman, his lawyer, and as you know, mine, on the world, but filing a counterclaim against her or a claim against her. And that did not work out. So here's how bad it is. Okay, before we get to where this is going, it's very bad. It's the dismissal is very, very bad for Justin Baldoni, at least as of right now, because California has this wacky rule. It's a new rule under a law Gavin Newsom signed in October 2023. It's California Civil Code 47.1. And this was signed by Gavin Newsom. It extends the California Civil Code's definition of a privileged communication in a defamation action to include communications made without malice about an individual's own experience of sexual assault, sexual harassment, workplace harassment, or discrimination, and cybersexual bullying. And what this means is that any defendant accused of defaming someone who then wins, who gets, for example, the case dismissed against her, she's been accused of defaming him in, let's say, a 12b6 motion, and what was at issue was her privileged communication about her alleged sexual harassment or workplace harassment, is entitled to recover attorney's fees and costs, as well as treble damages and punitive damages. Treble means triple. This is what Gavin Newsom did, was said, if you get wrongfully sued for defamation, and the defamation you're accused of is you're a woman accusing somebody of sexually harassing you, and basically he fights back by saying this is defamation, and you as the woman, it could be the other way, but let's just go for, in this particular case, because that's the facts here, that it's the female accusing the male of sexual harassment, that you are not only entitled, if you win, if you prevail against this defamation charge, to your attorney's fees and costs, but we will triple those damages and potentially award you punitive damages to punish him and discourage others like him from bringing such defamation claims in California. Now, that's very bad. This case wasn't in California, but it was governed by California law. And this is brand new. This is one of, if not the first case in which this law has kicked in. And so I don't know how bad this is going to get, because, I mean, her lawyers might have expended $5 million. I've worked at large law firms where you easily expend millions of dollars in fees in fighting a 12b6 motion, or in filing one for that matter. And so it's going to be millions. The attorney's fees are going to definitely be in the millions. The only question is how high. There would also be a question of reasonableness. This judge is not going to say, oh, you spent $50 million, Team Lively. Yeah, okay. He has to pay you $50 million and I'm going to triple them. That's not happening. But let's say she has $5 million in attorney's fees. It is not outside of the realm of possibility that he then triples those and awards her $15 million in damages, and also potentially punitives. I don't think that's going to happen. It's all within the judge's discretion. And these claims are far from so specious or speculative or without merit that I think that a sane judge would say, I'm going to impose that kind of a punishment or pain on the defendant here. Well, technically in this particular claim, he's the plaintiff. He's the defamation plaintiff against her. I just don't think that this judge is going to do that to Justin, given how strong his defense is to her underlying claims and how his defamation claim against her really was well supported. It was. The reason they've been dismissed is because he recognized that there's a privilege in California to make the claims she's making of sexual harassment under California law if you do it in a legal proceeding. That's really why his defamation claim against her was dismissed. It's not because, he has no grounds to say he didn't harass her, that she's doing all of this to build up her own Me Too cred and trying to make herself into a, feminist hero. He does have the proof of all of that. It's that there's this privilege that covers, according to this judge, her complaint in the California Civil Rights Division or Department And for that matter, he says it kind of extends to the New York Times. So a reporter, like somebody at the Times, like yours truly, who cites allegations in a complaint, a legal document, generally won't be subjected to defamation claims if you just repeat what somebody's alleging in a lawsuit. And I have to say, as somebody who's in the journalism business, I like that law. I like that general rule because I should be allowed to tell you what somebody's alleging in a court without endorsing it in such that I get sued for defamation myself. But Brian Friedman's lawsuit on behalf of Justin Baldoni, to me, included far more than just allegations that were in that complaint lively filed with the California Civil Rights Department. It was clear to me that what was in that New York Times article included allegations beyond that complaint. And to me, the judge just never squared that circle. He just kind of seemed to gloss over the fact that there had clearly been additional communications between Team Lively and the Times. That's how I read it. He's ignoring that and just saying, the privilege that protects a sexual harassment victim making allegations in a legal document gets her off the hook, and the reporter privilege gets the New York Times off the hook. We are devoting the live portion, the first 2 hours of our live portion, to the Epstein files. There's been so much happening as a result of these documents that were released a few weeks back. Attorney General Pam Bondi announced over the weekend, just this past weekend, that the Department of Justice has made public, quote, all files required by the Epstein Files Transparency Act, which President Trump signed into law just a few months ago on November 19th. There have been questions about whether that's true. She says it is. In total, there are more than 3.5 million pages of documents, 2,000 videos, and 180,000 images in the latest dump. You can search them for yourself on justice.gov/Epstein, which we've been doing here as a team for the past week. Basically, every celebrity or public figure you can think of comes up in this search. And you have to be very careful about it, because what the FBI did originally, or what the DOJ did when they released this, was they released a whole list of complaints received by the FBI about just anybody. So like anybody who could have called up during the Trump presidency and been like, Trump raped me. And they would put that down. It would be listed in the FBI database of complaints about various people. You have to say it would happen at Epstein's mansion or what have you. And it'd be in there. And they released that like it was real. And people were going with it all over the internet. It was like, okay, we've really gone too far on releasing every document. But that's what the law required. That's what they did. And, you know, there were irresponsible people who took all of those complaints like they were real, even the ones that said, not credible, not credible, not credible, not credible. And that's unfortunate. But there is a lot of very interesting stuff in here. As I say, it's going to take years to go through all of this. We could still be getting major revelations for months, and we will follow up when and if we do. But from what we have seen so far, these documents do provide a window into the global elite and how they behave when they think no one's watching. It's really not great. It's not great at all. Here's the Daily Podcast last week.
Do these new documents shed any light on the question of whether or not Jeffrey Epstein ran a pedophilic ring that trafficked underage girls to those around him?
In short, the answer is no. Basically, the 14 and 15 and 16-year-old girls that we've heard about were largely recruited for him.
But what's important to understand, again, the first time he went to jail in the mid-late 2000s, it's on charges that he is soliciting underage girls to get massages. And when he gets out of jail, he appears to change tactics. He seems to decide he's going to be more careful about the law. What we see is a form of trafficking after he gets out of prison that relies mostly on women who were a bit older, 18 and 19-year-old women from Eastern Europe, than the victims we know about from before he died.
I mean, they were a bit older, but they were still equally vulnerable in a different way with a different legal definition.
All right, so that's interesting. That was the New York Times doing its deep dive in a podcast that I actually found very helpful. And they're saying there's just no evidence in here of a pedophile ring. And they point out in that same podcast that there was even a prosecution memo that was contained in the latest batch of documents where the prosecutor said what they looked at and what they did not find was evidence of a pedophile ring, though they did look. And they did find 14, 15, and 16-year-old girls that were recruited for Epstein, not for a web of friends, but for Epstein, prior to his initial plea deal. Okay, prior to the initial plea deal that he struck in 2008 when Dershowitz was his lawyer. So he was abusing these young teenage girls back then. And that's what he struck the plea deal for. That's what became so controversial because then in 2018, the Miami Herald dropped its reporting saying there were dozens of girls and he only had to answer for like 2. Thanks to Alan. Alan did what, defense lawyers are supposed to do. It's not his fault. It's Epstein's fault, and it's the prosecution's fault for agreeing to it without consulting the victims, by the way, which became a huge deal. But it does appear, I haven't gone through all the documents, but it does appear from the New York Times reporting that after his plea deal, Epstein got smarter and started sticking to girls who were of age, and mostly Russians or Eastern Europeans. And I have to tell you, it's a very interesting question because obviously that's a totally different kettle of fish than a 14-year-old girl, because now you're an adult in the eyes of the law. And there's no question of consent, really. I mean, you're capable of consenting when you are 19 years old, but you are still capable of being sex trafficked. I mean, the whole case against P. Diddy revolved around whether he had sex trafficked Cassie and other of his girlfriends by strong-arming them into sex with these sex workers. Ultimately, the jury did not find him guilty of that. But we had a whole prosecution, the implicit, acceptance of which was it can be done to an adult woman who's even in a love relationship with the defendant. I mean, it can be done. So it's not really an answer to whether Jeffrey Epstein was a sex trafficker to say all of his alleged victims were of age when he was having whatever relationship he was having with them. It's a more complex issue than that legally. But I do think we need to get into this with that right mindset. The young teen thing, according to the New York Times, which has had a whole team going through all these documents, they say appears to have stopped after he got arrested and struck that initial plea deal in 2008. Then he goes forward with the of-age Russians and Eastern Europeans. And now there is a question about whether they were serially sex trafficked by Epstein to himself and to his friends. And I have to say, there's a lot of evidence of that in there. Now, were they all sex trafficked victims or were some just gold diggers? That's also possible. I mean, the difference between a gold digger and a sex trafficking victim is force, coercion. A gold digger is not there by coercion. She wants his dough, so she gives it up. I know a lot of women who make that same choice. I've known throughout my adult life a lot of women who decide to make that same choice. They don't marry for love, they marry for dough, or they just want to be with the richest guy they can find, and they don't really care that whether he loves them or not. They give it up because they want to be taken care of. All right, now that's, you might call it a gold digger, you might call it whatever, a deal. That's an adult woman's choice. It wouldn't be my choice, but it's an adult woman's choice. But when you find an adult woman, 18 or above, and you threaten her that if she doesn't go with your friend, let's say Prince Andrew, just to pick a name out of the air, you're going to punish her. You're going to cost her job opportunities. You're going to publicly humiliate her. You could possibly release a naked tape of her. Now you're talking coercion, and the person is not necessarily there of her own free will. And that could convert you into a sex trafficker. And those are the allegations against Diddy, remember? It was like, Cassie wants to be with you. There's some evidence she wanted to participate in these freak-offs, but then there's a lot of evidence that she no longer did. Either during the freak-off itself, she ran out of the will to do it, and from that point forward, when you beat her in the back room to make her go back out there, or, over a period of years, it no longer became appealing to her, force and coercion was used, which is why that became a sex trafficking case. The jury didn't buy it. They said, she got a lot of, I think they frankly put her more in the field of the gold digger. Not a nice term, but you know what I'm saying. And so this, to me, what these documents are showing so far is, okay, not a pedophile ring, but a sex trafficker, an alleged sex trafficker. And unlike with the 14 and 15-year-olds who he was getting for himself to perform these X-rated massages on himself with the so-called happy ending. And I know, as I told you, I have a source who's very well connected in this case, who is very well connected to Epstein, and this source has told me that Epstein used to get the young girls to go find the next young girl, and he would pay them. And it would always be girls who were from the wrong side of the tracks, who needed money, and they would do it. He wasn't having sex with them. He was, getting a whatever. They were getting him to finish off with their hand, or sometimes oral sex. And that was his MO, if you will, in the first go-around. And then his MO, when he got more connected, when he became richer, was focused more on these other older girls and on this enormous circle of influence that he had been building. And I don't know if there's ever been somebody as well connected as Jeffrey Epstein, from Prince Andrew to President Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, when he was still a young playboy businessman. I mean, thank God for Donald Trump. He ended all relationship with Jeffrey Epstein very, very early on in Epstein's, rise to fame and wealth. It was like around 2005, I think it was. And so there's almost nothing. There are some references to Trump, but like not involving all that stuff that happened, from leading up to 2008 and thereafter. Trump's really not in here on that stuff. There's weird other allegations, like I said, about the FBI document. But this is not what I've seen about Donald Trump. It is about tons of rich men in America and overseas, tons, who not only wanted Epstein's advice financially, they wanted his little love letters, like Lawrence Summers when he was, the president of Harvard, on like how to get the girl to call him back. Remember the woman he was having the affair with? Wasn't sure she liked him. There's tons of people like that. In that same New York Times podcast on The Daily, they were pointing out Deepak Chopra. Deepak Chopra was having this intense back and forth with Epstein, and Deepak said to Jeffrey Epstein, quote, "How can I be sure that I'm eternal?" Oh my God. People go to that guy as though he's a guru with all sorts of deep life advice, the meaning of life and so on. And he was getting it from Jeffrey Epstein. Oh my God. Holy shit. That's a big reveal. Wow. They also talk about Prince Andrew, who we'll get to in a second, where he opens up, this is the New York Times, about the restraints of royal life and how difficult it can be to be a royal. Wow. And the person he's opening up to is not his therapist or a family member. It is Jeffrey Epstein. In another email quoting here from the Times, Epstein is arranging for Prince Andrew to meet a woman, and he tells Andrew, she's 26, Russian, clever, beautiful, trustworthy. And Andrew responds, sounding like a high school boy with a crush, "What have you told her about me? Have you given her my email?" It's amazing. It is amazing, like the amount of connections he had. And lots of these people have been lying about how close they were to Jeffrey Epstein. Most of them, I would venture to say, have been lying or at least downplaying their relationship with him, which I understand, given how toxic that name is now, but it really doesn't do anybody any good. Especially, like some of the people lied, and we're going to get to them by name, knowing that these files were about to come out. Like, how dumb is that? It's one thing to be a liar, but like a dumb liar, that's a bad combo, bud. A really bad combo. And they all have billions. Unlike you and me, they have billions. And so they've had a lifetime of getting away with it and of thinking they can behave with impunity. And that in large part is what this story is about. So no pedophile ring that we know of. No direct indication of a blackmail operation either that we know of. We'll talk about whether there is circumstantial evidence of it. And no smoking gun either, by the way, that he was employed directly by an intelligence agency. Although that's not what Bibi Netanyahu says. He says he was Israeli intelligence and worked for Ehud Barak. So, may not be in the documents, but it is in Bibi Netanyahu's hand, the truth. But there is still a great mystery about how he became so rich. Non-college graduate from Coney Island, no family connections, and super close ultimately to the likes of Bill Clinton. And not just any Bill Clinton, the immediate post-president, presidency, Bill Clinton. 2001 to 2004 was when Bill Clinton kept going on his jet 17 times. I mean, this is the height of Bill Clinton's post-presidential power. And those two were BFFs. It's amazing. And not to mention the years with Donald Trump, as I said. How he stayed so close, Epstein did, to the likes of Bill Gates, who really just comes off so poorly in all this, Steve Bannon, and as I say, Prince Andrew, even after he had to register as a sex offender for one crime that was solicitation of a minor for prostitution, which is not a thing. A minor cannot be a prostitute. They can only be a victim of a perverted older man, which is absolutely what Jeffrey Epstein was. Anti-ICE activists reach a new low. I mean, this is beyond. They've decided now, because there's been absolutely no crackdown by local police, that they can get away with storming churches and disrupting Sunday worship. It happened yesterday, and the city's Democratic leaders, as of noon Eastern today, nearly 24 hours later, have said nothing. Mr. Get the fuck out of Minneapolis, tough guy, Mayor Fry. Oh, so quick to tell ICE to get out. Nothing. Nothing. He said not a word, which clearly means he's fine with it. So is Governor Walz. They're fine seeing Christians, including children, harassed literally in the pews at Sunday Mass by these cretins who call themselves activists, who mean to harass any law-abiding Minnesotan, especially those in worship, because all these people worship is the god of wokeness, the god of leftism. That's their god. I mean, that's part of the problem here. We've talked about how uniformly they're unattractive. They tend to be fat, unkempt. You can tell they smell bad. And the other piece of it is they're godless. So they think nothing of going into a mass and disrupting people's private time with Jesus. That's fine by them. They don't care what the people are going through. And because they never go to church, you see, they don't realize that when you go to mass, you can become emotional. It brings up a lot for a lot of people. It's often the closest you feel to God and Jesus in your entire week. Some people are there praying over lost loved ones. Some people are tearful. Some people are really struggling in their personal lives. And this is the closest they can feel towards salvation, towards something larger than themselves. But these leftists don't understand that language, you see. They don't understand those sentiments. So they're fine harassing these people, whether they're hurting or not, including children who look scared in the pews. Aided and abetted, of course, by Don Lemon. Don Lemon, who reveled in it and lectured half of the parishioners about how they really had an obligation to sit there and fucking take it. That this was American as apple pie. Sit there and fucking take it. That was Don Lemon's basic message to these parishioners. He's a disgusting fool. Now, there's a question about whether he's also a criminal. That's kind of irrelevant to me. I mean, if he broke the law, I'm fine seeing him prosecuted. But I actually think what's more important is how disgusting he is. He's wearing a cap that reads like a lemon head or whatever, his little lemon, like self-promotional, and satanic. That's how that felt. Self-promotional and satanic. Can you imagine? Think about it. Just think about it. I know most of you guys are not reporters, but you are individuals in America who live your lives, and probably a large portion of you go to church or services. Can you imagine walking into somebody else's worship and disrupting it, and then you as a so-called journalist starting to lecture them about how they needed to take it, about how it was important, and it was quintessentially American and totally allowed under the First Amendment. This guy's fall from what was once the pinnacle of cable news, I'm not saying much, has been so precipitous and stunning. I mean, not to some of us who saw what a disgusting person he was a long time ago, but wow, this is like, okay. No one should ever look at this guy again. Okay, nobody should ever be watching his disgusting feed. His disgusting behavior dovetails perfectly with who he is as a so-called journalist and as a man. It happened at the city's church in St. Paul, Minnesota. Protesters say they took aim at that church because one of the church's pastors is allegedly involved in ICE operations. We actually don't know whether that's true or not. We were unable to confirm that. But they could have gone to that church and requested a meeting with that pastor to talk about their differences. Not that they had any right to do that. They had absolutely no fucking right to talk to anybody. They didn't. But they didn't even try. They did not even attempt to have a discussion with him outside of Sunday service because the whole point was to upset Christians. I'm sorry, I'm getting sick of this shit. Okay? I'm sick of this. Like, it was 3 weeks ago, we had Mark Levin calling Jack Posobiec a crackpot with his picture holding the rosary. Now we've got open season on Christians while they're in celebrating Jesus at their Sunday worship. What the F? Something's happening here, and it's satanic. They decided to interrupt Sunday worship to deliver their message of, quote, justice for Renee Good. And for good measure, this is just perfect. For good measure, chance of hands up, don't shoot, which is based on a lie about the 2014 police-involved shooting of Michael Brown. Here's what's so crazy. Sonny Hostin of The View, amongst other idiot leftists, I actually think Margaret Hoover was involved in it too, who's not a leftist but behaved like a moron in this clip, did the hands up, don't shoot on the set of CNN in the wake of the shooting of Michael Brown. Michael Brown is the reason Michael Brown got shot by the officer in Ferguson, Missouri. Michael Brown attacked the officer, as several witnesses, including 5 black witnesses, ultimately told Eric Holder's DOJ. That's why he was shot by the officer, as he then once again lurched forward toward the officer. That's what happened. Leftist liars got a lie started that he died saying, with his hands up, saying, don't shoot. It was not true. It's been completely debunked. It's been acknowledged as a lie by multiple leftists who write in papers like the New York Times and the Washington Post. And yet these idiots in St. Paul, Minnesota, refuse to take the truth when it's handed to them. Even by black witnesses, even by black commentators, even by a black attorney general. They don't give a shit. They're agenda-driven, okay? Now, here is the moment the protest began and a look at how the protesters hounded the parishioners.
Renee Good! Renee Good! Renee Good! Hands up! Don't shoot! Don't shoot! Don't shoot!
Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Where are your people? Why are you not at Whipple every day fighting for the humanity, standing for our people? Where are you?
This is the pastor
you drink
telling
your
them to get
coffee,
out.
you got your jewelry, you have your nice clothes.
This is a
but what do
leftist
you do?
harassing
What
the
do you
parishioners.
do to stand for your Somali and Latino communities? I'm not going to comment.
Parishioners being totally respectful. The leftists marching up and down the aisle. Fists raised. In that montage we just played, you can hear the pastor who was leading the service say, shame on you, and pointed the protesters to exit. That's it. You don't leave after that. It's called trespass. It's called criminal trespass. Parishioners engaged the protesters, begging them to leave, but they did not. By the way, they were so respectful that asshole, that complete asshole, we'll get to him. His last name is Kelly, who seemed to lead the whole thing, was in the face of these parishioners. Why aren't you standing with your Somali neighbors like they're all a bunch of racists because they don't want to support the fraudsters who have invaded Minneapolis? And the parishioners, I mean, I don't know what I would do. I really think I would have to go jihad on these people. But these parishioners are so kind and sweet. They really are Minneapolis nice. They're like, I have no comment. Please don't. Please leave. You watch this online and it's almost aggravating because you want these complete cretins. What you really want is for them to be punched in their face. That's really what I want. I want Jesse Kelly in that church. That's what I want. But instead they got Minneapolis, Minnesota nice. And we got begging for these people to leave, which is totally appropriate too, but they did not. They stayed for another 45 minutes. According to Alpha News, which we love, they did not leave until actually the police showed up. Oh, great. We finally did have police show up. On the live feed, because BLM was live feeding this, one protester could be heard saying, "This isn't God's house. This is the house of the devil." Well, you made it. You made it the house of the devil. You brought the devil inside. I could see it. Didn't I say satanic right at the top? That's how it felt. At one point, the church began blasting music, you heard it at the end of that clip there, to try to drown out the protesters. You know, much in the way we now hear the good guys chant USA, USA, when we hear people try to drown out Trump or one of his nominees at their confirmation hearings. Well, that was actually a good move. They tried to blast Christian music to try to drown out the absurd calls of these so-called protesters, these terrorists. And just seconds into the protest, I'm using that word very facetiously. This was not a protest. This is terror. This is terrorism. You can see one small child upset in a pew and being comforted by his dad. This is so sad. Imagine your little boy not knowing what to make of this, not knowing where it was going. Every child in America, unfortunately, knows that strangers sometimes come in to places where children are to shoot them. And now they see these bullies show up in a Baptist mass and threaten the people sitting there, try to shame and scream in the faces of them. A woman sitting next to the boy, likely his mom, can be seen putting her hand on his shoulder to comfort him. She looks bewildered. She's probably unsure whether these protesters are just there to yell or to do something more sinister. We just had a shooting inside of a church a couple of months ago. We've had multiple shootings inside of synagogues. So these people have to worry about whether they are just going to be allowed to worship or whether they're going to get hurt and their children are going to get hurt. You can't be sure, can you? Sadly, in this day and age. Don Lemon, who was totally enjoying his moment in the spotlight, also catching footage of an upset parishioner trying to get the protesters to leave. But in true Don Lemon fashion, he justified the protesters' actions.
Sure, people here don't like it, but protests are not comfortable. And there are people here who are, I'm looking at a young man who's in the corner. He's frightened. He's scared. He's crying. People are leaving church. So, yeah. Guys standing up now saying, "Get out of our church." He's screaming. They're trying to calm him down.
God bless him. What you can see is a parishioner yelling at the rioters, at the terrorists, "Get out! Get out!" He's screaming at them, "Get out!" And you've got Don Lemon's running commentary that protests are not comfortable. Guess what, Don? You're too stupid to understand the law, but this one also happens to be illegal. You know how it's illegal to harass people, to show up at the abortion clinic? You're not allowed to do that. The law makes it clear you cannot show up right outside of the abortion clinic and harass people, or any medical clinic. Well, guess what? That same law also applies to places of worship. You're not allowed to do it. There are some very limited, but this is one of them, limits on your First Amendment rights. The Supreme Court has made clear over and over and over and over and over that you can have restrictions on speech that govern time, place, and manner. And that's what this so-called FACE Act is. It's a restriction on time, place, and manner for protests around things like abortion clinics and around things like churches. And you certainly do not have the right to go into a place of worship and harass worshiping parishioners, something you, Don Lemon, and all of your disgusting BLM terrorists are about to learn the hard way. During the protests, Lemon talked to the pastor who was leading the service and had the gall to ask him, don't you think Jesus would understand?
I mean, this is unacceptable. It's shameful. It's shameful to interrupt a public gathering of Christians in worship.
But there were folks who will say,
I have to take care of my flock.
Okay, but listen, we live there's a constitution in the First Amendment to freedom of speech and freedom to assemble and protest.
We're here to worship. We're here to worship Jesus because that's the hope of these cities. That's the hope of the world is Jesus Christ.
I want to be very respectful. Please don't push me, though.
We're here to worship Jesus.
Oh my God, he's not.
That's why we're here. Okay, that's why we're here. Okay. That's what we're about.
Don't you think Jesus would be understanding
we're about
and love these folks?
We're about spreading the love of Jesus.
But did you try to talk to them as a Christian?
No one is willing to talk.
Okay.
I need to take a deep breath. This is so infuriating. Some people are too stupid to be allowed into the news. And that's saying something. Some people are too dumb to be allowed to do the news. He's too dumb. He's too dumb. He's too ideological. He's too sympathetic to the terrorists there and doesn't know shit about the law or the U.S. Constitution. Has no fucking clue what he is saying to that pastor there. That they have a First Amendment right to be there. You're going to learn the hard way, sir, how wrong you are. Lemon was also outside the church when some of the parishioners left and admitted it must have been traumatic for them. But he says, hey, that's what protesting's all about. Making children scared. Such a sweet guy, Don. Watch
this guy here. Look, he's hugging his kid. And, you know, I just imagine it's uncomfortable and traumatic for the people here. But again, careful, it's very slippery right here. Yeah. It's uncomfortable and traumatic for the people here, but that's what really, careful, please, really slippery. Not kidding. That's what protesting is about. And so
it's about traumatizing people. Literally, you heard it there. It's traumatic for people, but that's what protesting is all about. It's about traumatizing them. Men, women, children, Christians. It's fine. Let's get the Christians. I'm telling you, this is a growing attitude in this country, and it has to stop. The whole protest was organized by Nekima Levy-Armstrong. She's a longtime BLM activist. She's a lawyer and an idiot and a former law professor at the University of St. Thomas in Minneapolis. Okay, never heard of it. She says she's a reverend. Sure. Where do they allow this kind of behavior? Reverend. Per Alpha News, Armstrong said after the protest, quote, I feel that we did what needed to be done. And I know that this church will never be the same after today. You're right. I hope you get to say that to all of your fellow inmates. I really do. I hope you get to, I hope you're the one who they decide to room with the tranny roommate. I do. I really hope that when you actually go to pay for your crimes, you get introduced to your side's demands that, you know, we be open and welcoming to everybody. And you get the 6'5" huge fucking tranny posing as a woman as your roommate. You know, the one, this just hit the news. I think it was out of California, where the guy who continued to sexually assault women and force them to perform fellatio on him over and over got roomed next to a female or with a female in his cell. Why? Because of leftists like you, madam, who think that there's no such thing as a woman and that we can erase these lines. How's that going to go? I'm sorry. Like, I'm so angry right now. I just feel like, what? Something better be done. Pam Bondi's saying it will. Trump is saying it will. We'll see. Attorney General Pam Bondi writing on X, quote, the Justice Department is investigating at my direction. Any violation of federal law will be prosecuted. Harmeet Dillon, the assistant AG for the DOJ's Civil Rights Division, writing on X, a house of worship is not a public forum for your protest. It's a space protected from exactly such acts by federal criminal and civil laws. White House spokeswoman Caroline Leavitt weighing in, writing, quote, President Trump will not tolerate the intimidation and harassment of Christians in their sacred places of worship. All of which better be true. I have every reason to believe them. I think they're as angry as I am, and I look forward to seeing what they do with those feelings. We check the X feeds again. of Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, Minnesota Mayor Jacob Fry, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar so far. Zero reaction to this protest. She's probably in the middle of her 5 times a day prayer. She's probably too busy yelling Allahu Akbar and patting her husband's bank account. She can't spare a minute for the Christians who are suffering as a result of the Somali, her people, fraud at the center of all of this. I'm sure at some point today they're going to give their thoughts and prayers, but whenever it comes, it's too late. It won't be sincere because it doesn't take hours to condemn protests. Again, terrorism inside a church that left children frightened. And if you think all the protesters, again, I'm using that term very loosely, were just chanting generic woke mantras, you're wrong. One, I mentioned a moment ago, is named Megyn Kelly. According to Right Angle News Network, he's a paid agitator who travels from state to state harassing ICE agents. Why is he out on the street is the real question, because you see, he was arrested on Friday for reportedly impeding ICE, but was out thanks to the revolving door that is the criminal justice system in places like Minneapolis, in time for Sunday's, quote, protest. And we mean terrorism. He got up in the faces of the worshipers, screaming, ranting and raving about, quote, white people who are living lavish, comfortable lives. For the listening audience, he's white. Watch.
As you can see, all these pretend Christians, all these comfortable white people who are living lavish, comfortable lives while children are dragged into concentration camps. You're living real life, nice lives with your lattes, doing absolutely nothing for your Latino and Somali brothers and sisters. You are a fake Christian. Why are you not standing with your Somali and Latino communities? Why do I not see you out at Whipple every day protesting this attack on humanity?
In the face
You're
of 2 young men here.
You're pretending to be Christians, but we know you live an easy life, don't you? Living real comfortable while children are dragged into
Now
concentration camps. You're all living real comfortable,
Screaming at
aren't
kids in a
you?
van.
Shame on you. Do something. Stand
A
with
girl
the
in an American
Somalis.
flag sweater
Stand with the
slams the door.
Latinos.
Get away
Quit
from her.
ignoring this injustice.
Okay. The Daily Wire's Megan Basham reports this guy's been previously linked to a group disrupting church services in Washington, D.C., including one incident where the protesters caused a church parishioner to go to the hospital with a shattered eardrum after the person screamed into a bullhorn in their face. On TikTok, Kelly has called ICE agents Nazis. He has said the U.S. is an evil empire and that a civil war has already begun. And on one of his Sunday protest videos, he wrote, quote, no rest for demons. In that, Mr. Kelly, you and I are in perfect agreement. Who the demons are, we're going to have to fight out. She goes on to rip on his tax plan. There were tax cuts for billionaires and top corporations, and didn't pay much attention to middle-class families. All right, now Stephanie Ruhle knows better. She knows better. She was a business reporter. This is the truth. All income brackets benefited substantially from Trump's tax reforms. However, those who benefited the most were the working and middle class. There was a long article in The Hill that laid out how, according to IRS data, if you look at people's adjusted gross income under Trump, those who made between $15,000 and $50,000 enjoyed an average tax cut of between 16 and 26%. Those who made between $50,000 and $100,000 had a tax cut of 15 to 17% under Trump. Those who made between $100,000 and $500,000 had a tax cut of 11 to 13%. You can see the numbers are going down. The arrow is going down. They're still all getting tax cuts, but they're not as generous the more you make. Those who made over $1 million, less than 6% tax cut. All right, that's fine. I mean, they had more to begin with. I'm sure it wasn't quite as painful. It's not quite as painful for them when they have any sort of tax adjustment, but they had a tax cut indeed that was, by some estimates, 20% less than the tax cut given to the working class. So these are lies, and they were not brought up. There was no challenge whatsoever. Okay, then Ruhle asks her, all right, let's talk about taxes. Those tax cuts, they expire next year. And there are many people confused saying, I don't know what's going to happen. Are your taxes going to go up? My tax is going to go up? She says, and under Harris administration, at what income level should someone expect their taxes to go up? And Harris says, anyone making less, first of all, anyone making less than $400,000 a year, your taxes will not go up. Okay. Joe Biden peddled this lie too. And do you know what happened? Taxes did go up for everyone in the form of groceries and gas prices, everything you buy, as you well know, energy, your electric bill. The inflationary spending that these two did, like drunken sailors for the first few years of their presidency, has caused your tax in every corner of your life. So if you believe you weren't taxed by the Biden-Harris administration, if you're making under $400,000, which was a broken promise by Joe Biden, I got a bridge in Brooklyn I'd like to sell you. Then she goes on to say, I'm going to cut taxes actually for 100 million Americans. She's talking about her $6,000 a year child tax credit for young couples with their first year of their child's life. J.D. Vance is proposing a $5,000. It's the difference is not significant. And by the way, that is not something that's going to apply to the vast majority of Americans. Here again, right? So she's being asked a question about income tax. What's going to happen to you? And here she lies about if you're under $400,000, your taxes will not go up. And then she says, I'm going to give you the child tax credit, which is just it's like a present, right? I'm going to give you a tax present. So then Stephanie Ruhle asks her a good question. How are you going to pay for that? You can't just give people a tax credit like the child tax credit and just pull money off a money tree. It's not how it works. So how are you going to pay for it? She says expanding that child tax credit that you mentioned. You mentioned housing before, the $25,000 for the first-time home buyers. Giving that extra money for a first home, same thing. If you can't raise corporate taxes, or if the GOP takes control of the Senate, and she basically means if the GOP takes control of the Senate and if the GOP maintains control of the House, either one of those things will screw your plan because they're not going to help her offer these policies without appropriate spending cuts. That's not what's going to happen. And Stephanie Ruhle's pointing it out. Where do you get the money to do that? All right, that's the question. Where do you get the money to do that? We have this exchange. I have to revise my answer. Maybe this is the worst one. I don't know. There's 3 top contenders for worst bad. You watch it and you tell me. Watch the light bulb go on over Kamala Harris's head when she realizes she has no damn plan for if there's divided government and she can't shove through her agenda. Watch.
Expanding that child tax credit, or you mentioned housing before, giving that extra money for a first home. If you can't raise corporate taxes, or if GOP takes control of the Senate, where do you get the money to do that? Do you still go forward with those plans and borrow?
Well, but we're going to have to raise corporate taxes, and we're going to have to make sure that the biggest corporations and billionaires pay their fair share. That's just it. It's about paying their fair share.
She's an idiot. She's an idiot. She has no idea what she's talking about. I don't know if she understood the question. The question is, what if you cannot get this through in a divided government so that corporations pay more? And the answer is they just have to pay more. They have to. That's just it. That is just it. She sounds like one of those moronic TikTokers you see. That's just it. She sounds like a 4-year-old. That's her level of understanding. Don't believe any of these promises. She can't do it. She doesn't have a plan to fund it. And to the extent that that was exposed in the MSNBC interview, good on Stephanie Ruhle. Then they go on. Stephanie chimes in. Bill Gates just said this week if he was in charge of taxes, he would have paid more. Okay, great. But how do you find that line to make sure corporations are paying their fair share and they're not leaving our country? Because if you tax them through the eyeballs, they'll leave. Plenty of places where you can make widgets. Doesn't have to be in the United States. And then we get a lecture on, I work with a lot of CEOs. I've spent a lot of time with CEOs. Sure, Jan. I'm going to tell you that business leaders who are actually part of the engine of America's economy agree that people should pay their fair share. Oh my God, I can't. I can't. With the filler. I can't. So much filler. They also agree that we should look at a plan when we look at a plan such as mine about investing in the middle class, investing in new industries, bringing down costs, what is she saying? This is empty calories. Investing in entrepreneurs like small businesses, that the overall economy is stronger and everyone benefits. She said nothing. Part of my plan for the economy is investing in new industries in a way that we have active partnership with the private sector. I have worked with the private sector my entire career. Okay, she's been in government her entire career. I can't, all the rest goes on like that. I'm not going to make you go through it the way I had to last night. And then she ends with, so you can take a nice vacation from time to time. She said nothing about how you avoid taxing the corporations through the eyeballs to the point where they run, which is a real thing. Just ask New York City, where this exact thing is underway. Ask California, where this exact thing has been underway. Okay. Then we move on to my favorite. This is my favorite. All right, this is truly my favorite part. This is the part I was listening on SiriusXM last night, and I was like, what? As Sarah, my hairstylist, would say, what? I didn't get it. Okay, Stephanie Rule. One of the main problems, because they were talking about buying a home, all right? And Rule's saying, for people who want to buy a home, yeah, it'd be great to get that $25,000 kicker, only first-time home buyers. But it's not just affording a home. We don't have enough homes in this country. Absolutely right, says Kamala Rule. And one of the main problems are regulations and rules, strict rules at a local level. How do the feds cut through all that red tape and help the locals solve housing problems? That's actually a good question. How do they? Watch this.
How does the federal government cut through all that red tape and get down to, the suburbs of Pittsburgh and say, we're going to have to build some affordable housing here?
Part of my goal and the plan would be to create 3 million new housing units for rent and for ownership by the end of my first term. It includes also what we must do to cut red tape. You're absolutely right. I know that we have to reduce the red tape and speed up what we need to do around building. Some of the work is going to be through what we do in terms of giving benefits and assistance to state and local governments around transit dollars and looking holistically at the connection between that and housing and looking holistically at the incentives we in the federal government can create for local and state governments to actually engage in planning in a holistic manner that includes prioritizing affordable housing for working people.
Okay. So how are we going to cut through the red tape? It takes far too long. There's too much bureaucracy. I know we have to reduce the red tape and speed up what we need to do around building. And that is going to require working from the federal level with the state and local government. How? How was the question? That's where she should have jumped in, Stephanie. How was the question? Stop redefining the problem. I just laid out the problem. Now you're the one who's supposed to be running with solutions. What are they? The question, madam, was how. And it's going to be different in different places, depending on the needs of that community, the needs of that local government, the needs of that municipality. But working in consultation and coordination and also around incentives that we can create. What the fuck did you just say? I'm sorry, I can't. What is that? That's not a how. There's too much bureaucracy. We have to reduce the red tape. I know I said that. Speed up what we need to do around building. I know that was built into my question. And it's going to require working from the federal level with the state and local governments. I know. How? How? It'll be different in different places, depending on the needs of the community, of the local government, of the local municipality, working in consultation and coordination, and also around incentives that we can create. What? And then, just when you think, she keeps talking, you're like, maybe she saved the best for last. Maybe she's got another tool in her arsenal. Maybe she's got another trick up her sleeve. For example, great. An example, I'll take it. Some of the work is going to be through what we do in terms of giving benefits and assistance to state and local governments. Okay, I'm waiting for it. Great. We're lots of filler, but what? Around transit dollars. What? 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 The transit dollars. That's how she's going to get rid of the red tape stopping home building, transit dollars, and looking holistically, drink, at the connection between that and housing, and looking holistically, drink, at the incentives we in the federal government can create for local and state governments to actually engage in planning in a holistic, drink manner that includes prioritizing affordable housing for working people. I'm done. I'm out. I've heard enough. I can't. I object on every level I have inside of me to object. If you vote for that as president, then you deserve what you're going to get. I do not deserve it. The people who are going to vote for Trump do not deserve it. It's a calamity how dumb this person is, and that she's been placed in this position by her party, by fiat, without anybody. There are smart people in the Democrat Party. She's just not one of them. They weren't allowed to run either when he was seeking to be renominated or once he got cooed right out of office. They elevated her for all the same DEI nonsense principles. They put her in the vice presidency, not to mention the AG position, probably the Senate position, and certainly the DA position that led to this path in the first place. She's not a smart person. And that is on display every time she sits down for an interview. So I say, keep it rolling. You keep on, you go with your instincts. Yeah, you're on a roll now, post-debate. You did so well. You can do this, Kamala. You can do this. Keep talking. That's all Trump needs. Well, 48 hours ago, the reporting was that President Biden had appeared to have successfully fought off the intense pressure on him to withdraw as a candidate for re-election. The uprising in the House had all but been quelled by a Capitol Hill meeting at which Congressional Black Caucus members, including James Clyburn, stuck firmly by Mr. Biden. And terrified Democrats decided doing nothing felt safer than speaking out. What if he pulls it out? What if he wins? Do you want to be the one who turned on him? Over in the Senate, no greater courage emerged, despite ubiquitous reporting that the overwhelming number of Democrats in both chambers want Mr. Biden gone, do not believe he can win, and are starting to believe he'll take them down with him. Then Cook Political Report came out with a devastating look at the polls, essentially predicting a Donald Trump landslide. This, as CNN projected, the Republicans will win both houses of Congress if Joe Biden stays on as the presidential nominee. All after a New York Times poll showed Mr. Biden hemorrhaging voters as a result of the debate. Enter Nancy Pelosi yesterday morning on the president's favorite TV show, Morning Joe, refusing to accept reality because she's a woman who can usually change it. Namely, Mr. Biden's very clear message that he has firmly decided to stay in this race, something she was asked about on the air and after the fact, after her appearance in the hallway yesterday.
Convey to President Biden what you said this morning.
I'm not having any conversations with you or anybody else about what I talked to the president about, with all due respect.
Do you believe that?
I never do, so it's nothing new.
I understand, Madam Speaker. Do you believe that him waiting so long to make this decision could harm the party?
I'm not making any comments in the hallway about the fate of our nation, okay?
Are you concerned whether or not he can win in November?
I think he can win.
Do you believe he should run for re-election?
I'm not speaking English to you. I'm not going to be making any statements about any of that right now in the hallway.
Truth is, she's the most powerful Democrat, but not the only one, to pretend they've heard nothing from Joe Biden. We're just going to wait for his decision. We're just going to wait till he decides what to do. They're all pretending that he hasn't already done that. Mr. Biden, meantime, has been all but lighting himself on fire to tell everyone he's not going anywhere.
I don't think anybody's more qualified to be president or win this race than me.
It's up to the president to decide if he is going to run.
I'm here in North Carolina for one reason,
because I intend to win this state in November.
We're all encouraging him to make that decision because time is running short.
Well, let me say this as clear as I can. I'm staying in the race.
I have complete confidence that Joe Biden will do the patriotic thing for the country, and he's going to make that decision.
The bottom line here is that we're not going anywhere.
Whatever he decides, we go with.
I am not going anywhere.
Now, this morning, we get news via Politico that Ms. Pelosi is privately saying behind the scenes that Joe Biden should step aside, that he cannot win this November. Politico citing, quote, about a half dozen lawmakers and others, end quote, for this reporting, which means she's not even trying now to keep it a secret. On the heels of all that, Axios is out this morning with reporting that Senator Chuck Schumer, too, who earlier this week repeated the phrase when asked about this whole thing over and over, I'm with Joe, I'm with Joe, I'm with Joe, is also behind the scenes about as committed to Joe as Leonardo DiCaprio is to his about to turn 25-year-old girlfriends. Mr. Schumer now privately signaling to donors that he is, in fact, open to a ticket without Joe Biden at the top, following a barrage of phone calls from deep-pocketed Democrats, the ones who keep him in office, as well as his fellow senators, who are all melting down about the fact that the Republicans are going to win the Senate. Never mind, hold on to the House. But what about Hakeem Jeffries? We've heard less from him, Congress's other most powerful Democrat. He's the minority leader in the House. Moments before we came to air, Jake Sherman of Punchbowl News reported that he caught up with Mr. Jeffries and asked him directly about Mr. Biden staying on as the nominee. Was the response, I'm with Joe? Or James Clyburn's, I'm riding with Biden. I'm riding with Biden. Not exactly. He told Sherman that he's looking forward to concluding his talks with every single House Democrat, adding, quote, we'll convene as a leadership team and figure out the next step, end quote. What does that mean? What's to decide? The president has made clear he's decided. He's all in. What step are you deciding? What are you talking to every single House Democrat about? Clearly, it's not over. News today as well about the man at the very top of the Democratic leadership ranks, and that is former President Barack Obama. Remember yesterday that scathing op-ed in the New York Times by Democratic fundraiser actor George Clooney? Well, it appears he gave Mr. Obama, his close friend, the heads up about this piece and, surprise, surprise, reportedly received no objection, which was obvious to anyone who knew anything about the two men's close friendship. There was no way George Clooney would have done this without Barack Obama's blessing or, many believe, at Barack Obama's urging. Clooney claimed that the fundraiser he sponsored for Joe Biden 3 weeks ago, that the president, that president who was there was the debate Joe Biden, the Atlanta Joe Biden, not the Joe Biden of 2010, this is a big effing deal, or even of 2020. Conveniently left out of the op-ed is any explanation for why George Clooney said nothing of the president's diminished state after the event, particularly when the news world exploded with a debate about whether the videos from that fundraiser accurately portrayed Joe Biden as a frail, lost, elderly man who needed help getting off the stage, or whether those videos were cheap fakes, as the White House and others claimed. Where was Mr. Clooney then? The Biden camp now says George Clooney was only there for a few minutes for a photo op before he peaced out. Maybe that's true. But what about Barack Obama? He was there much longer. He was actually with President Biden on stage. We all saw it with our own eyes. And part of the cheap fake moment. Where's his account? Why won't he tell us now what he saw? After all, the country's facing an existential threat with the possible re-election of Donald Trump. Why would Mr. Obama leave it to others to deliver some direly needed straight talk to the nation? What did you see, sir? There's a fight, an important one now, between George Clooney, one of the largest Democratic fundraisers, and Joe Biden, and Barack Obama can settle it. He can settle it all. Okay. He's a former president. Maybe he doesn't want to get directly involved in these squabbles that could determine the presidency and, in Democrats' eyes, the future of our very country. But what about Barbara Streisand, Jimmy Kimmel? They were there too. What did they see? They've been remarkably silent. She tweets every 2 seconds. Where's her tweet about this? Why won't they tell us what they saw? Democracy dies in darkness, people. Don't forget. They're terrified. You all know what they saw. They saw what we saw. They saw the frail elderly man who needed help getting off the stage. They're just too chicken shit to tell us about it because they accurately deduce that he could still be the Democratic nominee and they don't want to ding him up. Maybe you give Barbara a pass. Who gives a damn what this singer saw or says? But you know what? Jimmy Kimmel happens to be employed by ABC, which happens to have a rather large news organization. And he has been one of President Trump's most vocal critics. Where are you, Jimmy? On vacation? Not good enough. You can still use your thumbs to send out a tweet. You could set the record straight right now, but you won't. Jon Favreau, he was also at the fundraiser, former Obama staffer and Pod Save America co-host. Now he's out there saying everyone at the event saw what George Clooney saw.
I mean, it was not surprising to any of us who were at the fundraiser. I was there. Clooney was exactly right. And every single person I talked to at the fundraiser thought the same thing, except for the people working for Joe Biden, or at least they didn't say that. But I remember my wife, Emily, turned to me after the fundraiser and said, what are we going to do? I mean, and I said, well, there's a debate in a week. Either he'll do well in the debate and we'll think, well, he was just tired because he flew all the way back from Europe and that'll be that. Or he'll be like this at the debate and then the whole country will be talking about it. And so here we are.
I see. So he saw it too. And he's got a very big platform. Did he use it the next day to tell us all, hello, 5-alarm fire, people. Joe Biden is infirm and no longer there. He did a show the next day. Let's listen to what he said.
If I took a poll and someone said, does the conviction make you less likely to vote for Donald Trump? I would say no.
No, I'm 100%.
I was never going to vote for him ever. Right. Trump visited a black church in Detroit and then spoke at the Turning Points USA conference. And TPUSA is known for its ties to white supremacists.
So that Trump got the name of the doctor wrong when he was demanding that Joe Biden take a cognitive test and then talking about how he is. It's Ronnie Jackson.
When you're going to accuse someone of cognitive decline, you want to get the doctor's name right.
Oh, my God. So the very issue of Biden's cognitive decline, at least as Trump was criticizing it, came up, and he said nothing but to criticize Trump for misstating a name. Nothing. Just like virtually every other Democratic talking head over the last 3 years. Zero courage, zero capacity or desire for truth-telling if it would harm anyone on Team Blue. Which leads me to Karine Jean-Pierre. Tough to say whether she's the biggest liar among the president's defenders, but she's definitely in the running. Here is her pre-debate spin on the so-called cheap fakes that were falsely portraying Mr. Biden as diminishing.
Do you have any concerns right now that this is the leading edge of any part of a Russian effort to interfere in the election? Has the president been briefed on this? And have you seen any evidence that the Russians or other foreign powers have tried to seize on the debate performance to repeat some of the president's most embarrassing moments?
So that's a very good question. I would leave it to the Department of Justice as what they announce. Obviously, that's for them to speak to. Look, AI has always been a concern. That's why the president made some announcements recently, an executive to take executive action on how we can deal with AI.
Great. Could be. Got to look into it. Maybe the Department of Justice will figure out whether these are cheap fakes. Maybe you should just call like your biggest fundraisers, George Clooney, and your biggest supporters in the Democratic Party, like the Pod Save America guys. Just why not ask them? They were there. You can find out. So easy. Time and time again, this woman came out to the press corps who are there to bring clarity to the American people who employ her. You're her boss. So am I. And defended the president's vim and vigor.
It is hard for us to keep up
with this president. He has a grueling schedule that he keeps up with that sometimes some of us are not able to keep up with.
Oh my gosh, he's the president of the United States. You know, I can't even keep up with him.
I'll quote a little bit of what the First Lady said, I think incredibly well, just a couple days ago. President Biden does more in 1 hour than most people do in a day.
And then came the debate and the reporting about the neurologist visiting the White House 9 times at least in the past year. And then genuine anger from the press corps, which behind the scenes we now know has been getting pummeled by this White House for even asking about Mr. Biden's cognitive well-being. James Rosen banned from press conferences for 8 months after he went there with the president. Others with their hands slapped and shamed for daring to bring up the topic. That's her doing that. That's her office. Those are her colleagues at the campaign as well. Now she comes out this week and she acts the way someone who knows they've done wrong acts. She acts the way your dog acts when he ate the brownies and crapped in your living room. Ears back, kind of sweet, slightly ashamed, and desirous of currying favor with the ones they wronged. Watch this.
I do take offense to what Ed alluded to. You know, come out here, every day there's a press briefing, and we do our best to give you the information that we have at the time. That's what we do. And we understand that the freedom of the press, we respect the freedom of the press. I appreciate the back and forth that we all have. I try to respect you, and I hope you try to respect me. And my team does everything that we can to make sure we get the answers to you. That's what we do. And sometimes we disagree. Sometimes we are not in agreement. But you know what? That's democracy. To say that I'm holding information or allude to anything else is not unfair. It's really, really unfair. And I will admit, I will be the first one to admit, sometimes I get it wrong. At least I admit that. At least I admit that.
Do you? Do you? I couldn't believe it when I watched this. When I heard this live, my jaw dropped. Please like me. It wasn't me. There could be congressional investigations of this disgusting cover-up, which is exactly like your dog's dump in the living room, by the way. It stinks to high heaven, and it is nearly impossible to clean up. She was finding that out real time. This was the first stage of coming to grips with the fact that the American people, not just Republicans, but all of us, are onto her. We know we've been spoon-fed lies. Yes, I know if you watch this show, you knew that long ago. But her side is finding it out, so she's panicked. As she sought to shore up her relationships with people who buy ink by the barrel, she lied more. The press exposed the fact that a neurologist had been visiting the White House residence clinic. Okay, now according to Dr. Ronnie Jackson, who was the White House doctor for both Obama and for Trump, he says that's right below the president's bedroom, and it is dedicated only to members of the first family, right? And she tried to take that visit and tell the press that meeting with this doctor was not about President Biden at all.
I just want to get a clarification on the letter that was sent last night.
Sure, absolutely.
From Dr. O'Connor. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it didn't seem to explicitly describe the nature of Dr. Kennard's meeting with Dr. O'Connor. So can you say whether that one meeting was related to care for the president himself?
I can say that it was not.
It was not. Okay, that's great. And can I just ask why that information that was released last night just wasn't said at the briefing yesterday?
Well, no. Actually, a lot of what is in the letter was said at the briefing, to be very, very clear. I said many of the things that were laid out in the letter was actually repeated right here behind this lectern at this podium yesterday.
By the way, she has a tell. She always says, we've been very clear when she's going to tell a lie. We've been clear, either precedes or follows her lies, often. And what she said there was exposed as a lie. That meeting was about Joe Biden. That was later outed, and she had to, again, dog with the tail between the legs, come back to the lectern and admit it when the press caught her. She also tried to tell the press that the president had not seen a doctor post-debate, when that was exposed as a lie too by the president himself He was meeting with those Democratic governors and he told them he'd been seen by a doctor. She then tried to say, well, what she meant was he hadn't gotten a full physical since the debate, which nobody was even asking about. But of course, Mr. Biden sees doctors every day. She wants us to know it's every day. It's not because of the debate or his performance there. He sees a doctor every day, conveniently, when he's drinking green juice and pumping iron.
Can you elaborate on what the difference is between a check-in and an exam? At these check-ins, does Dr. O'Connor or another staff member take the president's vitals or anything like that?
They're verbal check-ins with the president. They check in. As the president's exercising, that's usually how this happens.
Okay. Sure, Jan. As an added cherry on top of all of this, we get her self-aggrandizing rewrite of her own behavior.
It has been an unprecedented time. I think you guys could admit that, right? It is an unprecedented time. And so we are meeting the moment, a new moment that has never really existed before.
We're meeting the moment. You know, we admit when we're wrong. We respect you guys. We appreciate the back and forth of this room. My Lord. After this gaslighting, we got to the phase we tend to get from most liars when their lies are exposed. Jean-Pierre got defensive, and she feigned indignation when pressed on her many, many, many lies. This particular exchange with a CBS News reporter was about those neurology visits.
I do take offense to what Ed alluded to. You know, come out here, every day there's a press briefing, and we do our best to give you the information that we have at the time. We understand that the freedom of the press, we respect the freedom of the press. And my team does everything that we can to make sure we get the answers to you. That's what we do. And to say that I'm holding information or allude to anything else is not unfair. It's really, really unfair. And I will admit, I will be the first one to admit, sometimes I get it wrong. At least I admit that. At least I admit that.
So you heard of that there. A little similar to the first one, but more indignation. You know what a liar sounds like by this point in the program. You hear me talk about it all the time. Attacking the question and the questioner, classic responses of someone who is lying. I take offense. No one gives a shit whether you're offended. Literally no one cares. You're the White House press secretary. You are there to take a beating. You're there to provide information. And when you don't, and even when you do, to take a beating. You do that for the president. That's the job. You don't take offense. There's no offense. Take the questions. Answer the questions. Be truthful. And if you can't be truthful, get out of bounds. That's what you should do if you're trying to protect your boss. Not lie repeatedly and not tell us not to believe our own lying eyes and not give us bullshit like you can't even keep up with him. My God. The press corps has no respect for this woman or, quite frankly, for her boss at this point or his other staff. The press are angry. Yes, even the bent press that are completely wrapped around the axle for Democrats are angry because they feel foolish. They've also been made fools of. And that same press corps is going to be there this evening when Joe Biden holds a 6:30 p.m. news conference after his NATO meetings. First it was 5:30, then they moved it to 6:30. We are getting dangerously close to bedtime. This is the first time he's had a presser in months and during what can fairly be described as a stressful week. The White House expects big things from Mr. Biden this evening. Whatever you may think of him, he has their total respect and reverence. Here they were describing this upcoming presser.
This week, President Biden will speak to national labor leaders of AFL-CIO, host the NATO summit to show the unprecedented strength of our alliance, hold a press conference, a big boy press conference, according to Justin Sink from Bloomberg.
After that, the president will hold a press conference, I guess a big boy press conference is what we're calling it.
Oh my God. Okay. I realized that was first penned by someone in the press. They picked it up and went with it. So tonight, Joe Biden will hold a big boy presser, trying to convince Pelosi, Schumer, Jeffries, Obama, and others he can eat his peas and chicken too. He can stay up late and get his homework done on time. He can go on the potty and pull up his own big boy pants And the dignity of his office, already grossly diminished by this dishonest cast of characters, will fall even lower. I don't see how Joe Biden can survive here. I know it's better for Trump if he does. I don't really care. He's not fit. His staff is part of the biggest presidential cover-up in decades. He needs to step down from the presidency, never mind the campaign, for the safety of the country. That's what a big boy would do.